Rain hammered against cracked asphalt outside Abilene, while 20-year-old Lily Rodriguez counted $40, the only thing standing between her and complete erasure. Nobody survives alone in West Texas when the world's already decided you're disposable. She'd been sleeping in a dead trailer with no electricity, stealing day-old bread from dumpsters, and wondering if disappearing completely might hurt less than fighting. Then she found the motorcycle, rusted, buried, forgotten beneath twisted scrapyard metal like something someone desperately wanted erased. Most people saw junk. Lily saw herself. When she scraped away decades of rust and discovered 3 letters carved near the engine, JTM, she didn't know she'd just awakened a ghost that would bring 97 armed bikers to her door by sunrise. Some secrets don't stay buried. Some debts get paid in blood and chrome. If you want to see how a homeless girl with $40 survives the most dangerous 24 hours of her life, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to know who rides with us tonight. The diner's neon sign outside Abilene died sometime around 3 a.m., leaving Lily Rodriguez sitting in the dark with coffee she couldn't afford and a borrowed phone she'd have to return before the owner noticed. 20 years old, homeless for 6 months, hungry for longer. The kind of invisible the world gets good at stepping over. She spread the $40 bills across the cracked Formica counter and counted them again. Same answer, same dead end. The waitress, 50-ish, tired, wearing a name tag that said Darla, refilled her cup without asking and didn't mention the 2 hours Lily had been sitting there nursing the same drink. "You working something out, honey?" Darla's voice carried the texture of 1,000 cigarettes and too many night shifts. Lily folded the money back into her pocket. "Just math that doesn't add up." "Story of my life." Darla moved to the next booth, wiping tables nobody sat at. The diner was empty except for a trucker asleep against the window and a cook who hadn't looked up from his phone in an hour. Outside, the rain turned the parking lot into a mirror reflecting nothing but darkness and the occasional semi rolling past on the interstate. Lily watched water run down the glass and thought about how easy it would be to just stop. Stop fighting. Stop pretending tomorrow would be different. Stop waking up cold in that rotting trailer with no heat and roaches crawling across her face while she slept. 6 months ago, she'd been surviving in a weekly motel on the edge of town, working 2 jobs that barely kept her fed. Then the motel doubled its rates. Then one job disappeared when the owner's son needed hours. Then the other job fired her for missing a shift she'd missed because she'd been in the emergency room with a fever that should have killed her but didn't, because apparently the universe still had plans to make her suffer. Now she lived in an abandoned trailer in the Sundown Mobile Home Park, a graveyard for forgotten people at the edge of Abilene, where county services didn't reach, and cops only showed up to arrest someone. No electricity, no running water, just 4 walls with holes she covered with garbage bags and a door that didn't lock. She showered at the truck stop on 83 when she had $3 for the fee. She ate what she could steal or what churches gave away on Wednesdays. 20 years old and already exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. Darla came back with a plate of fries she definitely hadn't ordered. "Kitchen's closing. These were going to hit the trash anyway." "I can't. Trash doesn't pay." Darla set the plate down and walked away before Lily could argue. She ate slowly, making each fry last, tasting salt and grease, and the specific shame of charity that keeps you alive but costs something you can't name. When she finished, she left the borrowed phone on the counter, belonging to a guy from the trailer park who'd loaned it for 20 minutes, and stepped into the rain. 4 a.m. No traffic, just darkness and the sound of water hitting metal and the long walk back to a place that wasn't home and never would be. She passed the scrapyard on Miller Road because it was faster than the main route and because nobody gave a shit about trespassing laws when you had nothing worth taking. The rain had slowed to a cold drizzle that soaked through her thin jacket and turned her breath to fog. The scrapyard stretched across 5 acres of twisted metal, dead cars, and industrial wreckage lit only by a single security light that hadn't worked in months. That's when she saw it, partially buried beneath a collapsed chain-link fence and a pile of rusted rebar, a motorcycle. Old, destroyed, covered in decades of corrosion and dirt and the kind of damage that only comes from being deliberately hidden. Most of it was buried, just the front wheel and part of the handlebars visible through the debris. Lily stopped walking. She didn't know shit about motorcycles. Didn't know why this one made her chest tighten, or why she was suddenly moving toward it through the mud and scrap metal like something was pulling her forward against logic. She knelt in the dirt and started digging with her bare hands. The metal was cold and sharp. Rust came off in reddish-brown flakes that stained her skin. She pulled away rebar and fence wire and chunks of concrete until she could see more of the frame. It was massive, heavy, built like something meant to survive wars. The tank was dented and scratched. The engine casing was cracked. The leather seat was rotted through. And carved into the metal near the engine mount, barely visible beneath the corrosion, 3 letters. JTM. Lily traced the letters with her fingertip. They'd been etched deep, deliberate, like someone had needed to mark this machine as theirs before it disappeared. She didn't know what the letters meant, didn't know why seeing them made her feel like she'd just found something that had been waiting specifically for her. She stood slowly, looking at the buried Harley in the dim pre-dawn light, and made the kind of decision people make when they've got nothing left to lose. She was going to buy it. But the meat. The scrapyard opened at 8. Lily waited outside the gate in the rain, soaked through, exhausted, already regretting a plan that made no sense. When the owner arrived, a thick-shouldered man in his 60s wearing coveralls in suspicion, she pointed to the buried motorcycle and asked how much. That? He squinted toward the back corner. Didn't even know that was still here. How much? He looked at her, really looked, taking in the wet clothes, the hunger-thin frame, the desperation she couldn't quite hide. You got a truck? That thing probably weighs 500 pounds. How much? $40. And you haul it out yourself. I ain't helping. Lily handed him the bills before he could change his mind. He pocketed the cash and unlocked the gate. You got until noon. After that, it's trespassing. She spent the next 4 hours digging the Harley out of the ground. The rain stopped, replaced by brutal Texas sun that turned the scrapyard into an oven. She used crowbars in her hands and a desperation that bordered on madness. The machine was heavier than anything she'd ever moved. Twice she thought about quitting. Twice she kept going because quitting was just another word for dying slow. By the time she'd freed it completely, her hands were bleeding, her back screamed, and the sun was directly overhead. The motorcycle lay on its side in the dirt, broken, rusted, barely recognizable as something that had once moved. Now came the hard part. She didn't have a truck, didn't have help, didn't have anything except 2 miles of West Texas highway between the scrapyard and the trailer park, and a motorcycle that weighed more than she did. She started pushing. The front wheel was seized. The frame dragged against asphalt. Every 10 feet she had to stop and catch her breath. Cars passed without slowing. A few people shouted things out their windows. Insults, laughter, the kind of casual cruelty people throw at those they've decided don't matter. She pushed through it all. The sun climbed higher, her vision blurred. Sweat mixed with blood from her torn hands and dripped onto the chrome. She counted steps instead of distance, because thinking about how far she still had to go felt impossible. 1 mile turned into 90 minutes. The second mile felt like dying. When she finally reached the Sundown Mobile home park, it was past 2 in the afternoon and her legs were shaking so hard she could barely stand. She guided the Harley through the front gate and across the cracked pavement to her trailer. A rusted single-wide with boarded windows, and a door that hung crooked on broken hinges. A few neighbors watched from their porches. Nobody offered help. Nobody ever did. Lily chained the motorcycle to the trailer's frame with a lock she'd stolen from the truck stop and collapsed onto the front steps. She sat there breathing hard, staring at the machine she'd just dragged across 2 miles of hell for reasons she couldn't explain. The letters carved near the engine caught the afternoon light. JTM, someone's initials, someone's bike, someone's past buried in a scrapyard like evidence that needed to disappear. She didn't know who, didn't know why. But sitting there on those broken steps, bleeding and exhausted and still alive against all odds, Lily Rodriguez felt something she hadn't felt in months. Purpose. That night she worked by candlelight. The trailer had no electricity, so she lit every candle she'd collected from dumpsters and church giveaways and arranged them in a circle around the motorcycle like some kind of mechanical altar. The Harley filled most of the tiny living room. She'd wrestled it up the front steps using wooden planks as a ramp and sheer stubbornness as leverage. Now it sat waiting, rusted and broken, and somehow still defiant. She started with the tank, scrubbing away decades of corrosion with steel wool and vinegar she'd traded for at the convenience store. Rust came off in sheets. Beneath the damage, hints of black paint appeared, deep, glossy, the color of midnight roads. She worked in silence except for the scrape of steel wool on metal and the occasional pop of candle wax. Outside, the trailer park settled into its usual chaos, dogs barking, couples fighting, televisions bleeding through thin walls. Nobody knocked. Nobody checked if she was alive. That's how the sundown worked. You stayed invisible or you became a target. Hours passed. Her hands cramped. The candles burned lower. She moved to the engine casing, carefully cleaning around the carved letters. JTM. They were deeper than she'd thought, etched with something sharp and deliberate. Not just initials, a claim, a promise, a mark that said, this belongs to someone. Around midnight, she found the first photograph. It was tucked inside a saddlebag she hadn't noticed until now, hidden behind the seat in a compartment held shut by rust and time. The leather bag cracked when she pried it open. Inside, wrapped in disintegrating plastic, was a single photograph. The image was faded, water-damaged, barely recognizable, but she could make out two figures, a man wearing a leather vest covered in patches, and a woman with dark hair and eyes that looked exactly like Lily's own face staring back from the mirror. Her hands started shaking. She held the photo closer to the candlelight. The woman was young, maybe 19 or 20. She was smiling, standing next to the same Harley that now sat in Lily's trailer, one hand resting on the tank. The man beside her had his arm around her shoulders. His face was damaged in the photo, scratched beyond recognition, but the vest was clear. Patches covered the leather. At the top, visible, despite the wear, a name. J.T. Maddox, JTM. Lily stared at the photograph until the candles burned low and the trailer went dark except for streetlight bleeding through gaps in the boarded windows. She stared at the woman's face and saw her own eyes, her own bone structure, her own smile she'd seen maybe twice in her life when things didn't feel completely hopeless. She didn't sleep that night, just sat on the floor with the photo in her hands and a question burning through her chest that had no safe answer. Who was this woman? And why did she look like Lily's reflection? By sunrise, the entire neighborhood knew something was wrong. It started with the sound, a low rumble that built slowly from distant thunder into something that shook windows and set off car alarms. Lily was still sitting on the trailer floor when the first motorcycle appeared at the entrance to Sundown Mobile Home Park. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 20. Within 3 minutes, 97 Harleys filled the street outside her trailer. She stood slowly, heart slamming against her ribs, and moved to the window. Through the gaps in the board, she could see them, bikers in leather cuts and road-worn boots standing beside their machines in the early morning light. Chrome reflected the pale sun. Engines idled in perfect synchronization. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just waited. Neighbors appeared on porches in bathrobes in fear. A few grabbed their kids and disappeared inside. Others stood frozen, staring at the sudden occupation of their street by men who looked like they'd ridden out of someone's nightmare. Lily's hand shook as she watched. This wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. They were here for something specific. The front door of her trailer rattled, a knock so controlled it was almost polite. She didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there staring at the door like it might explode. The knock came again. "We're not here to hurt you." The voice was rough, aged, and carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "But we need to talk about the bike." Lily's throat closed. She looked at the Harley sitting in her living room surrounded by dead candles and rust stains, and that single photograph still lying on the floor. They knew. Somehow, they knew. She crossed the room slowly and opened the door. The man standing on her steps was maybe 60, silver hair pulled back tight, wearing a leather vest covered in patches that told stories she couldn't read. His face was scarred, old wounds that had healed wrong. His eyes were the color of winter storms. He looked at her the way a wolf looks at something it can't quite identify as prey or threat. Behind him, 97 bikers stood in formation, silent as gravestones. "My name is Jackson Maddox," the man said, "but people call me Stone." He nodded toward the Harley visible through the open door. That motorcycle belonged to my brother. Lily's voice came out raw. Your brother's dead? Don't know. He disappeared 15 years ago. Stone's eyes moved from the bike to her face, and something shifted in his expression, something that looked like recognition and shock mixing into something dangerous. Along with his pregnant girlfriend, the photograph was still lying on the floor behind her. The woman with Lily's eyes, the man whose name was carved into the Harley's frame. Stone saw it before she could react. His gaze locked onto the photo, then back to Lily's face. The silence stretched into something unbearable. What was her name? Lily's voice cracked. The girlfriend. Stone didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet enough that only she could hear it. Maria Rodriguez. The world tilted. Rodriguez. Her mother's last name. The only thing she knew about the woman who'd given birth to her and disappeared before Lily's first memory could form. The name on the single piece of paperwork she had from the state. A hospital record that listed an unnamed infant born to Maria Rodriguez in El Paso 20 years ago before both mother and child vanished from every database like they'd never existed. I think you should come inside, Lily said. Stone stepped through the doorway. Behind him, the 97 bikers didn't move. They just stood there in the rising heat, engines still idling, waiting for orders that might not come. Inside the trailer, surrounded by rust and candle wax and poverty, Stone walked slowly around the Harley like a man approaching something holy or cursed. He touched the tank gently, traced the carved letters with his fingertips, and when he spoke again, his voice carried 15 years of grief. JT was the best rider I ever knew, and the most reckless. He looked at Lily. When he and Maria disappeared, we searched for 2 years. Found nothing, no bodies, no trail, just gone. Why would they run? Because they were scared. Stone's jaw tightened. JT got involved with the wrong people, a rival club trafficking weapons across the border. When he tried to back out, they came after him. After Maria. They were going to disappear completely. Start over where nobody could find them. Lily's hands were shaking. Maria was pregnant? 7 months. The math worked. The timeline fit. The photograph matched. Stone picked up the picture from the floor and studied it in the dim light. This is them. The night before they vanished. He looked at Lily again, really looked, taking in every detail of her face like he was solving a puzzle that had haunted him for 15 years. How old are you? 20? The silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath. Stone set the photograph down carefully and stepped closer. You got any idea who your parents were? State records say Maria Rodriguez gave birth to an unnamed daughter in El Paso 20 years ago. Mother disappeared from the hospital. Child went into foster care. Lily's voice was flat, reciting facts she'd memorized from documents she barely understood. I aged out of the system 6 months ago with nothing except a birth certificate that doesn't list a father and a mother I never met. Stone exhaled slowly. JT would have been 22 when they disappeared. Maria was 19. He looked at the Harley, then back at her. You find this bike in a scrapyard? On Miller Road, buried like someone wanted it gone. They did. Stone's expression hardened. We all did. After JT disappeared, we searched everywhere, found the bike hidden in a barn outside town 3 years later. It was evidence, proof he'd been there. But it was also bait. Anyone looking for JT would look for the Harley. So we buried it, literally. Took it apart and scattered the pieces across 4 counties to keep it from leading anyone to him. Someone put it back together. Someone did. Stone's voice went quiet. Someone who knew where every piece was hidden. Someone who knew JT might still be alive somewhere and might come back for it one day. Lily felt dizzy. You think he's alive? I think if he was, he'd have come home. Stone moved toward the door, then stopped. But I also think you're standing here holding a photograph of your mother and my brother, looking exactly like Maria looked when she was your age, asking questions about a motorcycle that should have stayed buried. He turned to face her fully. I think you're JT's daughter. The words hung in the air like smoke. Outside, 97 Harleys continued their low rumble. Neighbors watched from windows. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the trailer park into an oven. Lily looked at the photograph, at the woman with her eyes, at the man whose initials were carved into a machine someone had tried to erase. What happens now? Stone walked to the door and gestured to the bikers waiting outside. One by one, they shut off their engines. The sudden silence was louder than the noise had been. Now? Stone looked back at her. Now you're under protection. Anyone comes for you, they come through all of us. I don't understand. Your family. That's all you need to understand. Stone stepped onto the front steps and raised his voice to carry across the entire park. This is Lily Rodriguez, J.T. Maddox's daughter. Anyone touches her, anyone threatens her, anyone looks at her wrong, you answer to the Brotherhood. 97 men responded in perfect unison. Not with words, with presence. They stood there in the Texas heat, scarred and dangerous, and absolutely committed to a girl they'd never met because she carried blood that mattered. Lily stood in the doorway of her rotting trailer, homeless and hungry and 20 years old, staring at an army of bikers who'd just claimed her as their own. Stone turned back to her. We're rebuilding this bike, right here, right now. You're going to learn how. He nodded toward the Harley. That machine is your birthright. Time you learned how to make it run. Within an hour, the trailer park transformed into a workshop. Bikers rolled in tools, parts, equipment. They worked in the street under the climbing sun, engines and metal and expertise mixing into something that looked like resurrection. They taught Lily how to strip an engine, how to read compression, how to listen for damage in the way metal moved. Nobody asked if she wanted this. They just gave it to her anyway because in their world, family wasn't a choice. It was a debt paid forward through generations of loyalty and blood. And Lily, who'd spent 20 years invisible, suddenly found herself at the center of something she didn't understand but couldn't walk away from. The Harley sat in pieces across the pavement. Stone worked beside her, explaining camshafts and timing chains in a voice that carried decades of road knowledge. Other bikers drifted in and out, offering advice, telling stories about JT, watching Lily with expressions that mixed grief and hope into something fragile. By noon, they'd stripped the bike down to its frame. By sunset, they'd started rebuilding it from scratch. And sitting in the dirt beside 97 bikers who'd made her family without asking permission, Lily Rodriguez held a wrench in her bloody hands and wondered what kind of life she'd just traded $40 to inherit. Yeah. 3 days passed in a blur of engines and metal and questions nobody would answer directly. The Harley took shape slowly, new parts mixing with old chrome, modern engineering meeting vintage brutality. Lily worked from sunrise to midnight, learning mechanics through repetition and correction from men who treated every bolt like it mattered. Stone stayed close. Not protective exactly, more like a shadow making sure she didn't disappear the way his brother had. On the fourth morning, while Lily was adjusting the carburetor under Stone's watch, a younger biker approached carrying a metal box wrapped in plastic. He was maybe 30, heavily tattooed, wearing a cut that marked him as road captain. Found this under the seat mount, he said, handing the box to Stone. Stone's expression went dark. He turned the box slowly in his hands, examining the seal like it might explode. This was welded shut. Someone cut it open. Recently? No. Stone pried the lid fully open. Years ago. Maybe when the bike was hidden. Inside was a waterproof pouch, military grade, the kind designed to survive floods and fires. Stone pulled it out carefully and opened the seal. A letter fell into his hand. The paper was old but intact, covered in handwriting Lily recognized from the photograph. Masculine, rough, written fast. Stone read silently for 30 seconds. Then a minute. His hand started shaking. What is it? Lily's voice came out wrong. Stone didn't answer. He just handed her the letter. The ink was faded but readable. Lily's eyes tracked the words, and with each line, the ground beneath her feet felt less stable. Stone. If you're reading this, we're probably dead. Or we made it and never came back, which amounts to the same thing. The Scorpions are hunting us. We said no to running guns across the border, and they decided that was the same as betrayal. Maria's 7 months pregnant. We can't fight them and protect her at the same time. We're going dark. New names, new lives. If we survive, we'll never contact you because contact means risk and risk means they find us. The baby comes first. I hid the bike where only you could find it if you looked. If our daughter ever finds it first, you tell her, we loved her enough to disappear. JT. Lily read the letter twice, then a third time. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't crack. She just stood there in the Texas heat holding proof that her parents had chosen to vanish to keep her alive. Not abandonment, protection. Stone's voice was rough. The Scorpions disbanded 8 years ago. Feds took them apart for trafficking. If JT and Maria survived long enough to see that, then they could have come home. Lily finished the thought. But they didn't. No. The silence stretched. Around them, bikers pretended not to be listening while hanging on every word. The Harley sat half-assembled, waiting. Lily folded the letter carefully and handed it back to Stone. Where would they have gone? Somewhere they could disappear completely. Somewhere the Scorpions had no reach. Stone stared at the paper like it held more answers than it gave. El Paso, maybe, or further south, could be anywhere in 1,000 miles. They died. Lily said it flat, like accepting it made it hurt less. That's why they never came back. Stone didn't argue. Maybe. Or maybe they're still out there. Maybe. Lily looked at the Harley, at the carved initials, at the pieces of her father's life scattered across the pavement. I want to find them. Lily, I want to know. Her voice didn't rise, didn't break, just carried the weight of 20 years spent not knowing. Even if they're dead, especially if they're dead, I want to see where it ended. Stone studied her for a long time. Then he looked at the gathered bikers, 97 men who'd spent 4 days rebuilding a motorcycle for a girl they barely knew because she carried the blood of a brother they'd lost. We ride at dawn, Stone said. Halt. They left Abilene in formation before sunrise. 97 Harleys rolling south through the dark Texas plains, headlights cutting through fog, engines synchronized into a sound that carried for miles. Lily rode behind Stone on his bike, her own Harley still weeks from being roadworthy, holding tight while cold wind tore through her jacket and turned her breath to ice. Nobody spoke. Nobody explained the plan. They just rode. The first stop was a storage facility outside Midland. Stone had a key. He didn't explain how or why. The unit was small, anonymous, paid for in cash under a name that didn't exist. Inside were boxes of documents, hospital records, police reports, photographs, evidence JT had been gathering before he disappeared. They spread everything across the concrete floor and searched by flashlight. Lily found a birth certificate, hers, with Maria's name but no father listed. She found hospital intake forms from El Paso dated 20 years ago. She found a photograph of Maria in a hospital bed, exhausted and pale, holding a newborn baby against her chest. Lily stared at that photograph for a long time. Her mother's face. Her own face as an infant. Proof she'd existed before the system swallowed her. There's more. Stone held up another document. A storage unit receipt from El Paso dated 6 months after Lily was born. Paid annually, still active. He's been paying for 15 years? Someone has. They rode through the day and into the night, crossing into El Paso just before midnight. The storage facility was in an industrial area near the border. Chain-link fences, security lights, rows of identical units stretching into darkness. Stone had the key for this one, too. Unit 247 was larger than the first. When Stone opened the door and flipped on the overhead light, Lily saw what 15 years of secret payments had been protecting. A safe sat in the center of the room, industrial grade, the kind designed to survive fires and explosions. Beside it were boxes of baby clothes, children's books, envelopes addressed to our daughter, in handwriting that matched JT's letter. Stone approached the safe slowly. He didn't have the combination, but he had a crowbar and 97 bikers who knew how to open things that were meant to stay closed. It took an hour. When the door finally swung open, everyone went silent. Inside were 3 items: a hard drive, a bundle of cash wrapped in plastic, and a videotape. Stone pulled out the tape and stared at it like he'd just unearthed a grave. "Find us a player," he said quietly. Quote. They watched the video in a motel room 20 minutes away. Stone set up an old VCR he'd bought from a pawn shop, while Lily sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by bikers who filled every inch of available space. The air smelled like leather and cigarette smoke and tension thick enough to choke on. Stone pressed play. The screen flickered to life, showing a hospital room, sterile, fluorescent-lit medical equipment visible in the background. The camera angle was fixed, probably propped on a table. The timestamp in the corner read March 15th, 2006. Then J.T. Maddox appeared on screen. He looked exactly like the photograph, but worse. His face was bruised. His left arm was bandaged heavily. Blood seeped through the gauze. He was maybe 22, young and terrified in a way that made him look like a kid playing at being dangerous. "If you're watching this," JT said to the camera, "something went wrong." His voice cracked. He looked off screen at something, someone the camera couldn't see. "Maria's hurt bad. Desert Storm caught us outside Marfa. We crashed. She's—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Doctors say she might not make it, but the baby's okay. That's what matters." The camera angle shifted slightly. Maria appeared in frame now, lying in the hospital bed, pale and weak, holding a newborn baby wrapped in hospital blankets. Lily stopped breathing. "This is our daughter," JT continued. We're naming her Lily, after Maria's grandmother." He looked directly into the camera, directly at Lily, watching 20 years later. "If you're seeing this, we're probably gone. But you need to know something." He moved closer to the camera. His eyes were red. His voice steady despite everything breaking inside him. "We didn't abandon you. We loved you so much we walked away so you could survive. The Scorpions would have killed all three of us if we'd stayed together. This way, with you in the system, with us disappeared, you had a chance." Maria's voice came from off-screen, weak but clear. "Tell her we're sorry." "We're sorry," JT repeated. "We're so goddamn sorry you had to grow up alone. But you're alive. That's all that matters. You're alive and you're safe. And someday—" His voice broke completely. "Someday maybe you'll understand we did the only thing we could." The video showed him moving to Maria's bedside. She handed him the baby. JT held his daughter, held Lily, against his chest, blood from his bandages soaking into the hospital blanket. "Stone will find you," JT said, speaking to the baby who couldn't understand, and to the woman she'd become. "If you found the bike, he found you. Trust him. He's the only family you've got left besides us." He kissed Lily's forehead. Maria reached out with one weak hand and touched the baby's cheek. The three of them stayed like that for 30 seconds. A family that would never exist again after that moment ended. Then the video cut to black. The motel room stayed silent. 97 bikers who'd seen violence and death and horror beyond description sat motionless, staring at a dead screen showing static. Stone was crying, actually crying, tears running down his scarred face while he gripped the remote hard enough to crack plastic. Lily couldn't cry, couldn't move, couldn't process what she'd just watched. Her parents, her actual parents, holding her, loving her, sacrificing everything so she could survive. What happened to them? Her voice came out strange. Stone turned off the VCR. Maria died 2 days after that video. Complications from the crash. He wiped his face roughly. JT disappeared the same night, walked out of the hospital, and never came back. We found his bike hidden in that barn 3 years later. No body, no trail, nothing. He's dead. Probably. The Scorpions hunted him for years. Stone stood slowly. But maybe he survived. Maybe he's been watching you from a distance this whole time, making sure you stayed safe. Lily stood too. She walked to the window and stared out at the parking lot full of motorcycles and broken yellow light. They loved me enough to disappear. Yes. And I spent 20 years thinking they didn't want me. Now you know different. She turned to face the room full of bikers. What happens now? Stone picked up the hard drive from the safe. Now we find out what else your father left behind. He plugged the drive into a laptop someone had brought. Files appeared on screen, hundreds of them. Documents, photographs, audio recordings. Evidence JT had compiled about the Scorpions before everything fell apart. But one file stood out. A video file dated 3 years after Maria's death. Stone opened it. JT Maddox appeared on screen again, older now, harder, filmed in what looked like a cheap motel room somewhere anonymous. His face was thinner. His eyes were haunted. The bandages were gone, but the scars remained. "Lily," he said. Just her name. Just that. "If you're watching this, it means I'm dead and you found the storage unit. I've been watching you, from a distance, making sure you're safe. You don't know me. You'll never know me. But I know you. His voice was rough with exhaustion and grief. "You're 10 years old now. You're in foster care in Abilene. You're smart. You're tough. You're surviving. That's all I needed to see." He looked away from the camera briefly. "The scorpions are gone. Feds took them apart last year. I could come home now. I could find you, but I don't know how to be a father to a kid I abandoned, even if it was to keep you alive, so I'm leaving you this instead." He held up a document. "This is the deed to a property outside El Paso. It's yours. There's money in an account under your name, not much, but enough to start over when you age out of the system." JT set the document aside. "Stone's going to find you someday. When you find that bike, he'll know. Trust him. He's a better man than I ever was." The video went quiet. JT stared at the camera like he was trying to see through time to the daughter watching years later. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm sorry you had to grow up alone. But you're going to be okay. You're a Maddox. That means you don't break." He smiled, sad, broken, but real. "Your mother and I loved you more than anything. That never changed, not for 1 second." The video ended. The motel room stayed silent for a long time. Finally, Stone closed the laptop and looked at Lily. "Your father died 4 years ago. Car accident outside Tucson. We didn't know it was him until last year when the feds connected dental records during an unrelated case. By then, you'd already aged out of the system. We'd lost track of you completely." Stone's voice carried 15 years of failure. "I've been looking for you for 6 months. Then someone sent me a photo of that Harley sitting in your trailer, and I knew." "Who sent the photo?" "Don't know. Anonymous message. But someone's been watching. Someone who knew what that bike meant." Lily looked at the laptop, at the files containing her father's final words, at the room full of dangerous men who'd become her family in 4 days because blood mattered more than logic. "He said there's property and money." Stone nodded. "We'll help you claim it, but first—" He looked at the other bikers. "First, we finish rebuilding the Harley. That's what JT would have wanted. That bike's your inheritance, your connection to the people who loved you enough to disappear." Lily thought about $40 and a scrapyard and the specific kind of desperation that makes you push a 500-pound motorcycle through 2 miles of Texas heat because you've got nothing left to lose. "When do we go back?" "Now," Stone said. "We ride through the night. We finish the bike by week's end. And then you decide what kind of life you want to build from all this wreckage." He stood, and the rest of the bikers followed, moving toward the door in synchronized silence. Lily stayed by the window, staring out at the machines that had carried her this far and would carry her further still. "Stone?" He stopped at the door. "Thank you." The old biker looked back at her, this girl who'd appeared from nowhere, carrying the ghost of his brother in her eyes and her bones. "Your family, that's all the thanks I need." They left the motel as the sun rose over El Paso. 97 Harleys rolling north through the desert dawn, carrying a homeless girl toward a future built from rust and chrome, and the kind of love that only exists in people willing to vanish completely so someone else can survive. Behind them, the storage unit stood empty except for ghosts and evidence of a sacrifice 20 years in the making. And somewhere in the cold morning air between Texas and the rest of her life, Lily Rodriguez Maddox finally understood what it meant to be wanted, even by people she'd never meet, even by the dead. The ride back to Abilene took 14 hours straight through the desert night. No stops except for gas. No conversation except what the engines said to each other through synchronized throttle and the occasional hand signal cutting through darkness. Lily rode behind Stone, pressed against his back, feeling every mile through her spine and lungs, while cold wind turned her face numb and her hands into claws gripping leather. She'd watched her parents on video, heard their voices, seen them hold her as a newborn before everything ended. And now she was riding north with 97 strangers who claimed to be family, while the weight of 20 years pressed down on her chest, hard enough to crack ribs. They reached the sundown mobile home park just before dawn. The Harley still sat in pieces across the pavement where they'd left it, covered in tarps weighted down with cinder blocks. Tools lay scattered, parts organized in careful rows. The whole scene looked like a mechanical autopsy interrupted mid-procedure. Stone killed his engine. The others followed in sequence, 97 Harleys going silent one after another until only wind and distant highway noise remained. Nobody moved. They just sat there on their bikes in the gray pre-dawn light, waiting. "You good?" Stone's voice was rough from the ride. Lily climbed off slowly. Her legs barely held her. Defined good. Able to work. Yeah. Then we finished this today. Stone dismounted and pulled the tarps off the disassembled Harley. Chrome caught the rising sun. Your father built this machine to last forever. Time we prove he was right. The bikers moved into formation without being told. They knew their roles, knew what needed doing. Within 20 minutes, the street had transformed back into a workshop. Tools unpacked, parts laid out, expertise flowing through scarred hands that had rebuilt 1,000 dead machines. Lily worked beside Stone, learning through repetition and correction. He taught her to read metal fatigue by touch, to hear damage in the way bolts turned, to feel compression through a wrench handle. Other bikers drifted close, offering advice in fragments. Timing chain goes clockwise. Torque to spec, not to feel. If it fights you, you're doing it wrong. By noon, they had the engine mounted. By 3, they'd run the first compression test. By sunset, the Harley was ready for its first start in 15 years. Stone stepped back and gestured to Lily. Your bike. You start it. She moved to the motorcycle slowly. The key was new. They'd replaced the ignition, but everything else was original. Rebuilt, restored, but still carrying the bones of something her father had touched and ridden and loved enough to hide from people who wanted him dead. She turned the key, flipped the kill switch, pulled the choke. Then she hit the starter. The engine coughed once, twice. On the third attempt it caught, a low rumble that built into a roar that shook the ground and sent vibrations through her entire body. Chrome gleamed, exhaust poured blue-gray smoke. The Harley lived again after 15 years buried and forgotten. The bikers didn't cheer, didn't celebrate. They just stood there watching while Lily sat on her father's motorcycle and felt the engine's heartbeat through the frame. Stone's expression was unreadable. How's it feel? Heavy? Good. Light bikes kill you. He killed the engine with a gesture. Now we teach you to ride it. Tonight? Right now, before you have time to think. They cleared a section of the trailer park's main road. Stone explained the basics: clutch, throttle, brake, balance. Lily listened but didn't process most of it. Her brain was still in El Paso watching her parents die on video. Her hands were still shaking from 14 hours gripping leather. Her entire body felt like it belonged to someone else. Stone made her practice starting and stopping for an hour. Then slow circles. Then figure eights. By the time full dark arrived, she could ride in straight lines without stalling. Barely. That's enough for tonight. Stone's voice carried exhaustion that matched her own. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we ride for real. The bikers dispersed slowly, engines firing up one by one, headlights cutting through the dark as they disappeared into Abilene's night. Within 10 minutes, only Stone remained, sitting on his Harley beside Lily's trailer, smoking a cigarette and staring at nothing. Lily walked over slowly. You don't have to stay. I'm not leaving you alone, not after what you saw. I'm fine. You're not. Stone exhaled smoke. But you will be. She sat on the trailer steps. The Harley stood 20 feet away, dark and silent now, just a machine again instead of a resurrection. What was he like, JT? Stone was quiet for a long time. Reckless, loyal, stupid brave. The kind of guy who'd ride into hell to pull out a stranger just because it was the right thing to do. He flicked ash. He loved your mother more than anything. When she got pregnant, he changed, got careful, started thinking long term. That's when the Scorpions came after him. Because he wouldn't run guns. Because he had something to lose. Before Maria, JT would have said yes to anything. After her, he couldn't risk it. Stone looked at Lily. That's what killed them. Love made them vulnerable. But it also kept me alive. Yeah. Stone crushed the cigarette under his boot. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to hurt. He fired up his Harley and disappeared into the night, leaving Lily alone with a motorcycle that carried ghosts and a future she didn't know how to navigate. She went inside the trailer, lit candles, stared at the photograph of her parents until the wax burned low and exhaustion dragged her into something resembling sleep. But morning came with tension. Lily woke to voices outside, loud, aggressive, the kind of argument that ends with violence or silence. She moved to the window and looked through the boards. Stone's Harley was parked in the street alongside 5 others. The bikers stood in a tight circle near the rebuilt Harley, and from their body language, something had gone very wrong. She grabbed her jacket and stepped outside. "Don't give a shit what you think," Stone was saying. His voice was controlled but dangerous. "She's JT's daughter. That makes her family." The man arguing with him was younger, maybe 35, heavily built, wearing a cut that marked him as Sergeant at Arms. His name patch read Cage. "Family doesn't mean trust. We don't know this girl. Don't know if she's playing us." "Playing us how?" Maybe she found the bike by accident. Maybe she's seen the video. Maybe she's smart enough to realize showing up with JT's face gets her protection and money and a whole brotherhood ready to die for her. Cage pointed at Lily without looking at her. "Or maybe she's exactly who you think she is. Either way, we're taking a lot on faith." Stone's jaw tightened. "You questioning my judgment?" "I'm questioning how convenient this all is." JT disappears 15 years ago. His bike shows up buried in a scrapyard. This girl finds it the same week we start asking questions about old storage units and missing money. That's not coincidence, that's setup. Setup for what? I don't know yet. Cage finally looked at Lily. His eyes were cold. But I'm going to find out. The other bikers stayed silent, watching. Nobody jumped to defend her. Nobody contradicted Cage's paranoia. They just stood there waiting to see how this played out. Stone took a step closer to Cage. "You got proof she's lying?" "Not yet." "Then shut your mouth and follow orders." "Orders?" Cage's voice dropped. "Since when do you give orders, Stone?" "Last I checked, we voted on everything." The air went sharp. Stone and Cage stared at each other while the space between them filled with the kind of violence that doesn't need weapons to be lethal. Finally, Stone stepped back. "Fine. We vote tonight. Club meeting. Everybody gets a say." He looked at Lily. "Until then, she stays under protection." Cage nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He turned and walked to his bike. The others followed, except for one. A lean biker in his 40s with graying hair and scars that told stories Lily couldn't read. His name patch said Reaper. Reaper approached Stone. "Cage isn't wrong." "About what?" "Timing, convenience, the fact that nobody's asked the hard questions yet." Reaper glanced at Lily. "I believe she's JT's daughter, but belief isn't the same as knowing, and we're gambling a lot on a maybe." Stone's expression went flat. "What are you suggesting?" "DNA test. Settle it for real." "That takes weeks." "Then we wait weeks." Reaper's tone was matter-of-fact. "Better than finding out later we protected the wrong person." Stone looked at Lily. "You good with that?" She'd been standing silent through the entire exchange, watching men debate her existence like she wasn't there. Now they were all looking at her, waiting for her to prove she belonged. "Do whatever you need to do," Lily said. Her voice came out colder than intended. "I've spent 20 years proving I exist. What's a few more weeks?" Reaper nodded. "I'll make the arrangements." He walked back to his Harley and left. The street went quiet except for wind and distant traffic and the sound of Lily's pulse hammering against her skull. Stone lit a cigarette. "Don't take it personal. They think I'm a liar. They think you might be. There's a difference." He exhaled smoke. "Brotherhood's built on trust. You can't buy that with blood tests and photographs. You earn it through time and action. So what do I do?" "Survive the vote tonight. Show them you're not scared. Show them you belong here whether they like it or not." Stone looked at the rebuilt Harley. "And learn to ride that thing properly, because if they vote no, you're going to need to leave fast." The club meeting happened in a warehouse on the industrial edge of Abilene. Lily rode there behind Stone, following 96 other Harleys through streets that turned hostile as the sun set. The building was unmarked, corrugated metal walls, blacked-out windows, a parking lot full of motorcycles, and the specific kind of silence that comes before violence or verdict. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into a clubhouse. Long tables, leather couches, a bar running the length of one wall. Photos covered the walls, dead brothers, lost friends, road trips that had become legends. In the center of the room was a meeting table shaped like a horseshoe, surrounded by chairs marked with names and titles. Stone gestured to a corner. "You sit there. Don't talk unless they ask you a direct question. Don't lie. Don't cry. Don't apologize for existing." Lily sat. The bikers filled the space slowly. They moved like wolves, careful, aware, checking exits and watching each other with the kind of attention that suggested violence was always just a wrong word away. When everyone was present, Stone called the meeting to order by slamming a gavel against the table once. We're here to vote on Lily Rodriguez. The question is simple. Do we accept her as JT Maddox's daughter and bring her into the Brotherhood under full protection, or do we cut her loose and let her figure out her own path? Stone's voice carried no emotion. Cage, you called this. State your case. Cage stood. He didn't look at Lily, just addressed the room. JT Maddox was my brother. I loved him. When he disappeared, I spent 2 years searching, found nothing. Then this girl shows up with a bike that's been buried for over a decade, a story that matches perfectly, and a face that looks enough like Maria to sell the lie. Maybe she's legit. Maybe she's not. But we're gambling our safety, our money, and our loyalty on a DNA test that won't come back for weeks. I say we wait for proof before we commit to protection. He sat down. A few bikers nodded. Others stayed neutral. Stone looked around the room. Anyone else want to speak? Reaper stood. I agree with Cage on principle, but I also think we're forgetting something. He looked at Lily directly now. She didn't come looking for us. We came looking for her. She didn't know JT existed until we told her. She didn't know about the storage units or the videos or any of it. All she did was buy a motorcycle from a scrapyard and rebuild it in her trailer. If she's running a con, it's the slowest, weakest con I've ever seen. A few more bikers nodded. Another stood, older, maybe 60. His cut marked him as road captain. His name was Diesel. I knew JT better than most of you. That girl's got his eyes, his jawline, the way she stands like she's ready to fight or run. That's not coincidence, that's genetics. Cade shot back. Looking like someone doesn't make you family. No, Diesel agreed, but bleeding for them does. And she's bled plenty already. Lost her parents before she knew them, grew up in the system, aged out with nothing, found a bike and dragged it 2 miles through Texas heat because she had $40 and a prayer. That's Maddox blood. I don't need a test to tell me what I can see. The room went silent. Lily sat frozen in the corner, watching men debate her worth like she was livestock at auction. Stone stood again. Last chance. Anyone else? A younger biker raised his hand, mid-20s, clean cut, less scarred than the others. His patch read, Prospect. I think we're asking the wrong question. Explain. The question isn't whether she's JT's daughter. The question is whether we trust Stone's judgment. He's the one who brought her in. He's the one vouching for her. If we don't trust him, we got bigger problems than DNA. The room shifted. A few bikers exchanged looks. Stone's expression stayed flat, but Lily saw tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Cage stood again. Nobody's questioning Stone's loyalty. We're questioning his objectivity. He spent 15 years looking for his brother. Maybe he wants this girl to be JT's daughter so bad he's seeing what he wants to see instead of what's real. Careful. Stone's voice went quiet in a way that made the temperature drop. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Cage didn't back down. You're too close to this. You should have recused yourself and let someone neutral make the call. There's nobody neutral here. JT was everyone's brother. Exactly. Which is why we can't afford to be wrong. Cage looked around the room. I move we table the vote until DNA results come back. Keep her under loose observation, but no full protection, no money, no access to club business. If the test confirms she's JT's daughter, we bring her in proper. If not, she leaves, and we never speak of this again. Several bikers nodded. The energy in the room was shifting toward Cage's position. Caution over faith, proof over instinct. Stone looked like he'd been punched. Anyone second that motion? Reaper raised his hand. I second. All in favor? 43 hands went up. Not quite a majority, but close. Opposed? 37 hands, Stone's included. Motion fails. Stone's voice was hard. We need 2/3 to change protection status. She stays under full brotherhood until DNA comes back or until new evidence suggests otherwise. Cage stood slowly. This is a mistake. Noted. Sit down. Cage stayed standing. I want it on record. If this girl betrays us, if she's playing some long con we can't see yet, the blood's on your hands, Stone. Not mine. Sit. Down. Cage sat, but his eyes stayed on Lily with the kind of hatred that doesn't fade with time or evidence. Stone adjourned the meeting with another gavel strike. The bikers dispersed slowly, some stopping to talk in low voices, others heading straight for the bar. Nobody approached Lily, nobody acknowledged her. She sat in the corner like furniture while men who'd just voted on her existence pretended she wasn't there. Finally, Stone walked over. "You okay?" 43 people think I'm a liar. 43 people think we should be careful. There's a difference. Doesn't feel different. Stone pulled up a chair and sat beside her. "Listen to me. This brotherhood survived 30 years because we don't trust easy. JT understood that. Your mother understood that. You need to understand it too. So what now? Now you prove them wrong, not with words, with action." He stood. "Come on. I want to show you something." They left the warehouse and rode through Abilene's industrial district. The streets were empty, just pavement and streetlights and the occasional homeless person pushing a shopping cart through darkness. Stone pulled into an abandoned lot behind a burned-out factory and killed his engine. Lily pulled up beside him. "Why are we here?" "This is where JT learned to ride." Stone dismounted and walked into the lot. He was 16, stupid, thought he could steal a Harley and teach himself through trial and error, crashed 11 times the first night, broke his collarbone, got back on anyway. Lily followed him into the empty space. Broken glass crunched under her boots. "What's the point?" "The point is JT didn't belong either. Not at first. He was too reckless, too young, too willing to die for stupid reasons. The Brotherhood voted 3 times on whether to kick him out. 3 times he survived by 1 or 2 votes. Stone turned to face her. But he kept showing up, kept proving he belonged. Eventually, nobody questioned it anymore. He just was family. How long did that take? 5 years? Lily's chest tightened. I don't have 5 years. Then you better work faster. Stone walked back to his bike. Come on. You're riding solo tonight. I want to see how you handle the machine when there's nobody to catch you if you fall. They spent 3 hours in that empty lot. Stone stood at the edge, smoking cigarettes and barking corrections while Lily practiced turns, stops, acceleration, and the specific kind of balance that only comes from repetition and failure. She dropped the bike twice, stalled it 6 times, nearly crashed into a concrete barrier when the throttle stuck. Stone didn't help, didn't comfort, just watched and corrected. Lean into the turn, not away from it. Throttle's not a light switch. Stop jerking it. If you're scared, the bike knows. Stop being scared. By midnight, Lily could ride the lot in figure eights without dropping the Harley or panicking when the weight shifted wrong. Her arms ached. Her hands were blistered. She'd never been more exhausted in her life. Stone finally nodded. That'll do. Follow me back to your trailer. They rode through empty streets. Lily kept Stone's taillight in sight, matching his speed, learning the road through, watching how he moved through traffic that didn't exist. When they reached the sundown mobile home park, Stone killed his engine and waited while Lily parked the Harley beside her trailer. Tomorrow, you're riding with the Brotherhood. Full run. 200 miles. His voice carried no room for argument. Wear layers, bring water, don't fall behind. Where are we going? Doesn't matter. What matters is whether you can keep up. Stone started his bike again. If you can't handle the ride, you can't handle the life. Simple as that. He left before she could respond. Lily stood in the dark parking lot staring at her father's motorcycle, the machine that had cost her $40 and nearly killed her dragging it home. The machine that had brought 97 armed bikers to her door and changed everything. She went inside, lit candles, tried to sleep and failed. Her mind kept replaying the meeting, 43 hands voting against her existence, Stone defending her like she was worth dying for, Cage's eyes promising violence if she proved him right. Around 3 a.m., someone knocked on her door. Lily grabbed the wrench she kept beside her bed and approached the door slowly. Who is it? Reaper. She opened the door carefully. The biker stood on her steps, alone, wearing his cut but no visible weapons. His expression was unreadable. Can I come in? Lily stepped aside. Reaper entered and looked around the trailer, taking in the poverty, the candles, the complete lack of anything resembling comfort or safety. You've been living like this for 6 months? Yes. He nodded slowly. JT would have hated that. JT's dead. Yeah. Reaper pulled an envelope from inside his cut and set it on the counter. That's $5,000, cash. Not from the club. From me personally. Lily stared at the envelope. Why? Because I believe you're JT's daughter, and because even if you're not, nobody should live like this. Reaper moved toward the door. Use it to get electricity turned on. Buy food. Get a real bed. Whatever you need. The vote said no money. The vote said no club money. This is mine. Do what you want with it. He paused at the door. One more thing. Cage is dangerous. Not because he's violent. Everyone here's violent. But because he's smart and patient. If he decides you're a threat, he won't come at you direct. He'll wait until you make a mistake and use it to turn the Brotherhood against you. So what do? Don't make mistakes. Reaper stepped outside. And watch your back. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. He disappeared into the darkness, leaving Lily alone with $5,000 in cash, and the certainty that she'd just walked into something far more dangerous than homelessness ever was. The run started at dawn. 97 Harleys lined up outside the warehouse in perfect formation. Lily pulled in at the back, keeping distance from the core riders, trying to stay invisible. Stone rode up front alongside Cage and Diesel and other senior members whose names she didn't know yet. Nobody explained where they were going. Nobody briefed her on the route. They just rolled out when Stone gave the signal. 97 engines firing simultaneously, chrome catching the early sun, exhaust filling the air with the smell of gasoline and oil, and something that felt like controlled violence. They rode east out of Abilene, hitting open highway within 15 minutes. Stone set a brutal pace, 75 miles per hour on straight roads, barely slowing for curves, treating traffic laws like suggestions meant for other people. Lily focused on keeping up. The Harley was heavier than anything she'd ridden, the throttle response sharper, the braking distance longer. Every mistake would be visible to 96 riders behind her. She made dozens of mistakes in the first hour. Missed shifts, overcooked corners, nearly rear-ended the bike ahead when traffic slowed unexpectedly. But she stayed upright, stayed in formation, kept moving forward even when her arms screamed and her back felt like it was breaking. They rode for 3 hours without stopping, through small towns that disappeared in seconds, past abandoned farms and industrial wreckage and stretches of Texas. Nothing that looked exactly like Lily's entire life up until last week. The sun climbed higher, the heat became oppressive. She drank water from the bottle strapped to her tank and tasted dust and gasoline. Around noon, Stone pulled into a rest stop. The bikers filled the parking lot in seconds, killing engines, dismounting with the stiffness that comes from hours on vibrating metal. Lily parked at the edge of the group and climbed off slowly. Her legs barely held her. Her hands were cramped into claws from gripping the bars. Stone walked over. How you feeling? Like I'm dying. Good. That means you're still alive. He handed her a bottle of water. We're halfway. Next 100 miles or worse. More turns, worse roads, harder pace. Why are we doing this? Because I need to see if you break. Stone's voice carried no sympathy. If you can't handle a simple run, you can't handle what's coming. What's coming? He didn't answer, just walked back to his bike and waited for the others to mount up. The second half was exactly as brutal as Stone promised. The roads turned narrow and twisting. The pace stayed aggressive. Twice Lily nearly lost control in blind corners. Once she had to swerve to avoid gravel that would have dumped her into a ditch. By the time they reached their destination, a bar called Red Line on the outskirts of some town whose name she didn't catch, she was shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. The bikers parked in front of the bar and went inside without waiting. Lily sat on her Harley for a full minute, breathing hard, trying to remember why she'd thought $40 in a scrapyard was a good investment. Finally, she dismounted and followed them inside. The bar was exactly what she expected. Dark, smoky, full of leather and hostility. The bikers filled half the space, clustered around tables pushed together into one long surface. They were drinking, laughing, telling stories about the ride like it had been fun instead of torture. Lily found a corner booth and sat alone. Nobody approached. Nobody invited her to the table. She was invisible again, the same way she'd been invisible her entire life. Except now she was invisible while surrounded by people who claimed to be family. A waitress appeared, 50-ish, tired, wearing too much makeup. What can I get you? Water? That's it? Lily didn't have money for anything else. The 5,000 from Reaper was back in the trailer, hidden under a loose floorboard. That's it. The waitress left. Lily sat there watching bikers celebrate a ride she'd barely survived and wondered how long she could keep pretending she belonged before someone called her bluff. That's when Cage sat down across from her. He didn't ask permission, didn't announce himself, just slid into the booth and set a beer on the table between them. You rode well today. Lily said nothing. Most people would have quit after the first hour, or crashed, or fallen so far behind we'd have had to send someone back to scrape them off the highway. Cage drank. But you kept up. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Maybe both. What do you want? To understand you. He leaned forward. See, I've been thinking about your story. Homeless girl finds buried motorcycle. Just happens to be connected to a missing biker from 15 years ago. Just happens to look like his dead girlfriend. Just happens to show up right when we start digging into old storage units and money trails. That's a lot of just happens. Stone already explained, Stone's compromised. He wants you to be JT's daughter so bad he'll ignore every red flag. I don't have that problem. Cage's voice was quiet, conversational, and absolutely lethal. So I'm going to ask you directly. Are you running a con? No. You sure? Because if you are, I'll find out. And when I do, Stone won't be able to protect you. Nobody will. He finished his beer. Think about that. He stood and walked back to the main table, leaving Lily alone with her water and the certainty that she'd just been threatened by someone who meant every word. She stayed in the corner booth for another hour, watching bikers drink and argue and bond over shared history she'd never be part of. Finally, when she couldn't take another minute of being invisible, she walked outside. The parking lot was empty except for motorcycles and failing sunlight. She leaned against her Harley and stared at the horizon, trying to figure out how everything had gone wrong so fast. You planning to run? Lily spun. Diesel stood 10 feet away, smoking a cigarette, watching her with eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. No. Good, because running proves Cage right. Diesel exhaled smoke. He's not wrong to be suspicious. We've been burned before, lost brothers to lies and betrayal. So we don't trust easy. Then why did you vote for me? Because I knew JT, and I knew Maria, and I know what they looked like when they were young and in love and scared shitless about becoming parents. Diesel flicked ash. You got their fear. That's harder to fake than genetics. Lily didn't know what to say to that. Diesel crushed the cigarette under his boot. Stone's putting together a memorial ride next week for JT and Maria. 20 years since they disappeared. The Brotherhood does it every year. Ride to Marfa where they crashed, leave flowers, drink until sunrise. He looked at her. You should come. Will I be welcome? No, but you should come anyway. He walked back inside, leaving Lily alone with the sky turning purple and the sound of distant thunder that might have been weather or might have been motorcycles rolling toward violence she couldn't see yet. They rode back to Abilene through darkness. Lily's exhaustion had moved past pain into something that felt like dissociation. She followed taillights through black highways, trusting Stone's navigation, trusting the formation to keep her safe, even though half the riders thought she was lying about everything. When they finally reached the sundown mobile home park around midnight, she could barely stand. Stone pulled up beside her as she parked. You did good today. Doesn't feel like it. Never does. Stone killed his engine. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start weapons training. Weapons? You're under Brotherhood protection. That means you need to know how to protect yourself when we're not around. His voice went flat. Someone's been watching you, taking photos, sending them to me anonymously. That stopped after we found you, but it might start again. If it does, you need to be ready. Lily's blood went cold. Who? Don't know. Could be Scorpions looking for revenge even though they're disbanded. Could be feds watching because JT's name's still on old case files. Could be someone inside the Brotherhood who doesn't trust you. Stone looked at her. Or could be someone who knew JT survived longer than we thought and wants to finish what they started 20 years ago. You think he's alive? I think we found video of him recorded 9 years after he supposedly died. So either he survived a long time or someone's been lying about timelines. Stone's eyes were hard. Either way, someone knows more than they're saying, and until we figure out who, you're in danger. He rode off before she could ask more questions. Lily went inside the trailer and locked the door. She checked the floorboard. The $5,000 was still there, untouched. She lit candles, made instant ramen with water she'd heated on a camp stove, ate mechanically while staring at the photograph of her parents that she'd propped against the wall. Her father looked so young in the image, so certain he could outrun whatever was chasing him. But he couldn't. Nobody can. Eventually, everything catches up. Violence, consequences, the past refusing to stay buried. Lily blew out the candles and lay down on the floor. Sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept cycling through the day. Cage's threat, Diesel's strange endorsement, Reaper's money, Stone's warning about surveillance. Someone had been watching her before the Brotherhood found her, taking photos, tracking her movements. That meant someone knew about the Harley before she did, knew what it represented, knew who she might be. And if they knew that, they knew she was a threat to something. Around 3 a.m., Lily heard motorcycles approaching. Not 97, just 3 or 4. They idled outside her trailer for 30 seconds, engines rumbling, then rode away slowly like they were making a point. She went to the window and looked through the boards. No bikes visible now, just darkness and the distant glow of Abilene's lights, and the certainty that she wasn't safe anymore. Not from the Scorpions, not from the feds, not from Cage's suspicion or the Brotherhood's doubt or whoever had been watching her from shadows before any of this started. She pulled JT's letter from where she'd hidden it and read it again by flashlight. We loved her enough to disappear. Her parents had sacrificed everything to keep her alive and invisible. Now she was visible. Now people knew she existed. Now she was exactly the kind of target her parents had died trying to prevent. Lily folded the letter and sat in the dark, holding her father's words against her chest, and understood with absolute clarity that there was no going back now. The Brotherhood had found her. Cage had threatened her. Someone unknown was watching her. The only direction left was forward into whatever hell waited at the end of this road. And tomorrow, Stone was teaching her how to fight back. Because the girl who'd dragged a 500-pound motorcycle 2 miles through Texas heat wasn't someone who quit when things got dangerous. She was someone who survived by becoming more dangerous than whatever wanted her dead. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. And in the cold darkness of an abandoned trailer where a homeless girl had become something she didn't fully understand yet, Lily Rodriguez Maddox made a decision. If they wanted to know whether she was JT's daughter, she'd show them. Not with DNA tests or photographs or gentle persuasion. She'd show them by surviving what killed her father. And by making sure whoever buried that motorcycle in a scrapyard learned that some ghosts don't stay buried. They come back armed and ready to burn down everything that thought erasing them would be enough. The Harley sat outside, chrome gleaming under failing streetlights. Ready, waiting, just like her. Dawn came with rain, cold, relentless, turning the sundown mobile home park into a lake of mud and broken asphalt. Lily stood outside her trailer at 5 a.m., wearing every layer she owned, staring at the Harley while water ran down her face and soaked through her boots. Stone had said weapons training started at sunrise. She was ready 30 minutes early because waiting inside felt like suffocating. 3 motorcycles appeared through the rain at exactly 6. Stone, Reaper, and a third biker she didn't recognize. Older, maybe 65, his face carved from decades of violence. His name patch read, Gunner. They didn't kill their engines, just sat there idling, waiting for her to mount up. Lily climbed onto the Harley and followed them out of the trailer park. They rode south through rain that made the road slick and dangerous, visibility down to maybe 50 feet. No traffic. Just 4 bikes cutting through gray morning while thunder rolled overhead like artillery. They pulled into an abandoned quarry 20 minutes outside Abilene. The place was massive, carved stone walls rising 3 stories, pools of stagnant water reflecting nothing, rusted equipment scattered like the bones of dead machines. Stone led them to a flat area protected by overhanging rock. They parked in formation and killed the engines simultaneously. The silence that followed was heavier than the rain. Stone dismounted and opened a saddlebag. He pulled out a pistol, black, compact, the kind designed for killing at close range, and handed it to Lily. "You ever fire a gun?" "No." Good. Means you got no bad habits. He pulled out ammunition, loaded a magazine, and showed her how to chamber a round. Safety's here. Trigger pulls about 5 pounds. Aim center mass. Squeeze, don't jerk. Questions? Why am I learning this? Because someone's watching you. And when they decide to make a move, I might not be there to stop it. Stone gestured to a row of targets he'd set up against the quarry wall, paper silhouettes stapled to wooden frames. Start shooting. Lily raised the pistol. The weight felt wrong. The grip was too large for her hands. She aimed at the closest target and squeezed the trigger. The recoil shocked her. The sound was louder than she'd expected. The bullet hit Stone 6 feet left of the target. Again. She fired. Missed. Fired again. Missed worse. Stop. Stone walked over and adjusted her stance. You're fighting the gun. Let it do the work. Breathe out when you squeeze. Keep both eyes open. He stepped back. Again. She fired 20 rounds. Hit the target twice. Both shots were low and right, barely catching the silhouette's edge. Reaper spoke for the first time. She's flinching, anticipating the recoil. I can see that. Stone reloaded the magazine. You're scared of the weapon. That's normal. But fear makes you useless, so either get over it or stay vulnerable. He handed her the pistol. Empty the mag. Don't stop until it's dry. Lily fired 15 times. The noise became rhythm. The recoil became expected. By the last shot, she'd hit center mass 3 times. Stone nodded. Better? Gunner, your turn. The old biker stepped forward holding a shotgun, 12 gauge, sawed off, the kind that doesn't need accuracy to destroy. He handed it to Lily without ceremony. This is for close range, door breaches. Someone coming at you in a hallway. You point, you pull, you survive. He showed her how to load shells. The recoil will hurt. Don't let it stop you from firing again. Lily aimed at a target 10 feet away and pulled the trigger. The shotgun kicked like a mule. Her shoulder screamed. The target disintegrated into paper shreds and wood splinters. The sound echoed across the quarry like the world breaking. Again! She fired until her shoulder felt dislocated, and her ears rang so loud she could barely hear Stone's corrections. They made her practice until she could reload without looking, until she could fire from awkward positions, until the weapons felt like extensions of her hands instead of foreign objects. 2 hours passed. The rain never stopped. By the time Stone finally called it, Lily was soaked, exhausted, and her entire right side felt like it had been beaten with hammers. Stone collected the weapons. You're not good, but you're not helpless anymore. That's enough for now. He looked at Reaper. Show her the knife work. Reaper pulled a fixed blade knife from his belt, 6 inches of black steel, single-edged, designed for one purpose. Guns jam. Guns run empty. Knives don't. He moved closer to Lily. Someone grabs you. You got 2 seconds to decide if you want to survive. Show me what you do. Lily hesitated. Reaper grabbed her wrist suddenly, hard, painful, the kind of grip that meant violence was coming. Instinct took over. She twisted, tried to pull away, failed completely. Reaper held her effortlessly. Wrong. You're trying to escape. That's defensive thinking. Defensive gets you killed. He released her wrist. When someone grabs you, you attack. Eyes, throat, groin, whatever's close. You hurt them until they let go or until they stop moving. He handed her a rubber training knife. Try again. They practiced for another hour. Reaper came at her from different angles, different grips, different levels of intensity. Lily failed repeatedly, got thrown, got disarmed, got killed more times than she could count. But slowly, through repetition and correction, she started to understand the geometry of violence, how bodies move, where they're vulnerable, how to turn someone's strength against them. By the time they finished, the rain had turned to drizzle, and Lily could barely stand. Her shoulder was bruised, her wrists ached. Every muscle felt like it had been torn and rebuilt wrong. Stone walked over. How you feel? Like I got hit by a truck. Good. That means you're learning. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes and lit one. Tomorrow we do it again, and the day after, and every day until you can defend yourself without thinking. He looked at Gunner and Reaper. Take her back to the trailer. I got business in town. The old bikers nodded. Stone mounted his Harley and disappeared into the drizzle, leaving Lily with 2 men she barely knew and questions she couldn't voice. The ride back was silent, When they reached the Sundown Mobile Home Park, Reaper pulled up beside Lily's trailer and killed his engine. "You got something on your door." Lily looked. An envelope was taped to the rusted metal, white and clean against the decay. Her name was written across the front in handwriting she didn't recognize. She dismounted slowly and approached the trailer, pulled the envelope free. The paper was expensive, thick, textured, the kind that costs more than her weekly food budget. Inside was a single photograph. Lily stared at it until her hands started shaking. The image showed her parents, JT and Maria, standing beside a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit and a smile that looked carved from ice. They were younger in the photo, maybe 19 and 20, and they looked terrified despite the forced smiles. The location was some kind of office, wood paneling, leather furniture, certificates on the walls. On the back of the photograph, written in the same handwriting, "Ask Stone about Thomas Kane. Ask him why your parents really ran." Lily looked up. Reaper was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "What is it?" She handed him the photograph. Reaper studied it for 10 seconds. His face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "It was on my door." "When?" "Just now." Reaper looked at Gunnar. Something passed between them, a silent communication built from decades of riding together. Gunnar pulled out his phone and dialed. "Stone, we got a problem. Get back here now." 20 minutes later, Stone arrived with 15 other bikers. They surrounded Lily's trailer like a perimeter defense while Stone examined the photograph under the dim porch light. His hands were shaking. His jaw was locked so tight it looked like his teeth might shatter. "Where the fuck did this come from?" "It was taped to my door." Lily's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Who's Thomas Kane?" Stone didn't answer. He just stared at the photograph like it was a bomb about to detonate. Reaper spoke quietly. "She needs to know." "Shut up." "Stone, I said shut up." Stone looked at Lily. His eyes were different now, harder, more dangerous, carrying guilt that looked decades old. "Get inside. We need to talk. Privately." Lily led him into the trailer. Stone closed the door and stood with his back against it, blocking the exit. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands, and exhaled smoke that filled the small space with tension. Thomas Kane ran a trafficking operation out of El Paso in the early 2000s. Guns, drugs, people, anything that moved across the border illegally, he controlled. Stone's voice was flat, reciting facts he'd rather forget. The Scorpions worked for him. So did we. Lily's blood went cold. "What?" "The Brotherhood wasn't always clean. We did things, transported things, that we're not proud of. JT was part of it. So was I. We all were." Stone took another drag. "But JT fell in love with Maria, and when Kane found out she was pregnant, he made JT an offer. Work one more job, move a shipment of weapons to a cartel contact in Juarez, and he'd let them walk away clean." "What was the job?" "It was a setup." Stone's voice cracked. "The weapons were evidence. Kane was feeding intel to the feds, using the Brotherhood to take down his competition while keeping his own hands clean. JT figured it out 2 days before the delivery. He refused to run the shipment, told Kane to find someone else. And Kane sent the Scorpions after them, told them JT was stealing product, marked him for death." Stone crushed the cigarette against the wall. "JT and Maria ran. We helped hide them, scattered the Harley so nobody could track it. Thought we'd bought them time to disappear. But they didn't disappear. They crashed in a storm outside Marfa. Maria died. JT survived just long enough to hide you in the system and record those videos before Kane's people found him." Stone looked at Lily with eyes that carried 20 years of failure. "We thought Kane died 8 years ago. Heart attack, natural causes. His empire collapsed without him." "You thought wrong." "Yeah." Stone pulled out his phone and stared at the photograph displayed on the screen. "If someone's sending you pictures of Kane with your parents, that means either he's alive or someone's taken over his operation and knows exactly who you are." Lily felt the walls closing in. "Why would they care about me?" "Because you're evidence." Stone's voice went quiet. JT kept records. Documentation of every shipment, every payment, every dirty deal Kane ran through the Brotherhood. He was going to use it as insurance, leverage to keep Kane from hunting them, but he died before he could make the trade. "Where are the records?" We don't know. We searched for years. Never found them. Stone looked at her directly. But if Kane's people think you know where they are, they'll come for you. And they won't stop until you tell them, or until you're dead. The trailer went silent except for rain on the roof and Lily's pulse hammering against her skull. Everything she'd learned in the past week, the videos, the storage units, the Brotherhood's protection, had been built on a lie. Not about her parents loving her, but about why they'd really run. They hadn't just been escaping the Scorpions. They'd been running from a criminal empire that used the Brotherhood as cover. And Stone had known the whole time. You lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. Stone's voice carried no apology. Because knowing made you a target. I was trying to protect you. By letting me think my parents died for nothing? They died protecting you. That's not nothing. Lily stood and moved to the window. Outside, bikers stood in the rain waiting for orders. 15 men ready to die for her because Stone had decided she was worth it. Except now she understood they weren't protecting her from random violence. They were protecting her from a debt the Brotherhood owed for trafficking guns and blood money under the cover of loyalty. I want to see the records. Stone shook his head. We don't have them. JT did, which means they're somewhere. Lily turned to face him. And if Kane's people are coming after me, I need leverage. I need proof. I need whatever my father was going to use to keep them away. Even if we find the records, using them means going to war. With Kane's organization, with whoever took over after he died, with people who've been killing anyone who knows too much for 20 years. Then we go to war. Stone laughed, a sound without humor. You can barely ride a motorcycle. You can't shoot straight. You're 20 years old and you've been homeless for 6 months. What makes you think you can survive a war? Because I'm still alive. Lily's voice didn't rise, didn't crack. I survived the system, survived homelessness, survived 2 weeks with the Brotherhood while half of you think I'm lying. I'll survive this too. Stone studied her for a long time. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Diesel, get everyone to the warehouse. Emergency meeting, now. He hung up and looked at Lily. If we're doing this, we do it right. Full Brotherhood involvement, full vote, no more secrets. He opened the trailer door. Get on your bike. We ride in 5. Cut. The warehouse was already packed when they arrived. 97 bikers filled the space, standing room only, tension thick enough to choke on. Word had spread fast. Someone had threatened one of their own. Now they wanted blood. Stone called the meeting to order by slamming the gavel once. We got a situation. He held up the photograph. Someone left this on Lily's door 2 hours ago. The man in the suit is Thomas Kane. The people with him are JT Maddox and Maria Rodriguez. The room exploded into voices, shouting, curses. Diesel stood and roared for silence. The noise died slowly. Cage stood. Kane's dead. Has been for 8 years. That's what we thought. Stone's voice cut through the room. But someone knows enough to send this photo. Someone knows Lily's connected to JT, and someone knows the Brotherhood worked for Kane back in the day. So what? Cage's tone was sharp. Ancient history. We cleaned up our act years ago. Cut all ties to Kane's operation when the feds took him apart. The feds took apart the Scorpions. They never touched Kane directly. He died before they could build a case. Stone looked around the room, which means his records are still out there. His contacts, his leverage, everything he used to control us. Reaper stood. JT had copies. He was going to trade them for safe passage. We always assumed he destroyed them before he died. He didn't. Stone's voice was flat. He hid them. And now someone thinks Lily knows where. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Lily, standing in the corner like she'd been standing in corners her entire life. Except now the stakes were higher than hunger or homelessness. Now they were talking about survival against an organization that had killed her parents and was willing to kill her too. Cage spoke slowly. If Kane's people are moving against her, they're moving against all of us, because protecting her means we're in their way. Correct. So we have 2 choices, cut her loose and let them take her, or commit to full protection and accept we're going to war with people who have more money, more guns, and more reach than we'll ever have. Cage looked at Lily. No offense, but is she worth it? The question hung in the air like smoke. Stone stepped forward. She's JT's daughter. That makes her family. We don't abandon family. You sure she's his daughter? DNA test isn't back yet. I'm sure enough to die for it. Cage shook his head. That's not good enough. We need proof. Real proof. Not gut feelings and photographs. Then what do you suggest? Find the records. If Lily knows where they are, even subconsciously, we make her remember. If she doesn't, we use her as bait to draw out Kane's people and take them apart before they can move against us. Cage's eyes never left Lily. Either way, she's useful. Question is whether she survives being useful. Diesel stood. That's enough. We're not using her as bait. We're not risking her life because you're scared of getting your hands dirty again. I'm not scared of anything. I'm being practical. Cage turned to the room. We all got families now. Kids, wives, legitimate businesses. We're not the same brotherhood that ran guns for Thomas Kane 20 years ago. Going to war means risking everything we've built. Is she worth that? The silence that followed felt like the floor dropping out from under Lily's feet. She'd spent a week believing these men were her family. Now they were debating whether she was worth dying for, like she was livestock at market. Stone's voice cut through the tension. We vote. Full brotherhood. Same rules as always. 2/3 majority decides. He looked around the room. Question is simple. Do we protect Lily Rodriguez and accept the consequences, or do we cut her loose and let Kane's people take her? I want to propose a third option. The voice came from the back. Everyone turned. A biker Lily hadn't seen before stepped forward, late 40s, wearing a cut that marked him as road captain from the Lubbock chapter. His name was Cross. We find the records ourselves, use them as leverage to negotiate with Kane's people, trade the evidence for guaranteed safety, ours and hers. Stone shook his head. JT tried that, didn't work. JT tried it alone. We're 97 strong across 4 chapters. That's a different conversation. Cross looked at Lily. Where would your father hide something he never wanted found but needed to access if everything went wrong? Lily's mind raced. She'd seen the storage units, the videos, the safe. But none of those places felt permanent. None of them felt like somewhere you'd hide evidence meant to survive decades. Then she remembered something. A detail from the letter. A phrase that hadn't made sense at the time. He said he hid the bike where only Stone could find it if he looked. Lily's voice was quiet but carried. What if the records are with the bike? Or hidden where the bike was hidden? Stone's expression shifted. The barn outside town, where we found the Harley 3 years after JT disappeared. Did you search it? We tore it apart. Found nothing except the motorcycle. Maybe you weren't looking for the right thing. Lily moved toward Stone. My father was smart, paranoid. If he was going to hide evidence, he'd hide it somewhere connected to his escape plan, but separate from anything obvious. She looked at the gathered bikers. We need to go back to that barn, tonight, before Kane's people realize we're looking. Cage stood. This is insane. We're gambling everything on a maybe. You got a better plan? Yeah, cut our losses and walk away. Then you're a coward. Lily's voice was cold. She stepped into the center of the room, facing Cage directly across the meeting table. My father died protecting me from people you helped him work for. You want to cut me loose? Fine. But don't pretend it's because I'm not worth it. It's because you're scared of facing consequences for shit you did 20 years ago. Cage's face went dark. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll threaten me again? You'll turn the Brotherhood against me? You already tried that. Lily didn't back down. I'm done being scared. I'm done being invisible. If you want me gone, vote me out. But don't hide behind practical excuses when the real reason is you're terrified of admitting the Brotherhood's hands are as dirty as the people hunting me. The room went silent. 97 bikers stared at a 20-year-old girl who just called out their darkest secret in front of everyone. Stone broke the silence. All in favor of full protection and pursuing the records, raise your hand. 68 hands went up. More than 2/3. Enough to commit the Brotherhood to war. Motion carries. Stone slammed the gavel. We ride to the barn in 1 hour. Everyone comes. Nobody stays behind. If Kane's people are watching, I want them to see exactly what they're up against. The bikers dispersed to prepare. Lily stood in the center of the emptying warehouse, breathing hard, realizing she'd just committed 97 men to a fight that might kill them all. Stone walked over. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest. Maybe both. Yeah. He pulled out his phone and showed her a message that had arrived during the meeting. Unknown number, 5 words. She has 24 hours. Then we come. Lily stared at the screen. Who sent this? Whoever left the photograph. Stone's voice was grim. Which means they've been watching this whole time. They know where you live, know you're under protection, and they just declared a deadline. 24 hours to do what? Find the records and hand them over, or die trying. Stone pocketed the phone. So we better hope that barn has answers, because if it doesn't, tomorrow you're going to wake up to a war you can't win. Outside, engines started firing up. 97 Harleys preparing to ride into darkness looking for evidence that might not exist to fight people who'd already killed everyone who'd stood against them before. And Lily, standing in the cold warehouse with rain hammering the roof, and her father's ghost watching from 20 years past, understood with perfect clarity that she'd just stopped being the girl who dragged motorcycles through Texas heat, hoping to survive another day. Now she was the spark that would either save the Brotherhood or burn it to ash. And there was no going back from that. Not alive. 97 Harleys rolled out of Abilene at 10 p.m. under a sky that promised more rain. No formation this time. No careful discipline. Just raw aggression. Throttles open. Engines screaming. Headlights cutting through darkness like searchlights hunting prey. Lily rode near the front beside Stone, her father's Harley responding to every input like it had been waiting 20 years for this exact moment. They weren't just riding to a barn, they were riding to war. The location was 40 minutes northeast, an abandoned property off Highway 277 that had been forgotten by everyone except the Brotherhood and the ghosts it contained. Stone had explained it during the brief weapons check before they'd left. The barn belonged to a deceased member named Crow, who died in 2008. JT had hidden the Harley there after the crash, knowing the property was off every radar that mattered. When the Brotherhood had found the bike 3 years later, they'd searched for evidence but found nothing except rust and memories. Now they were going back. Because Lily was right. If JT had hidden something meant to survive decades, he'd hidden it somewhere connected to his escape, but separate from anything obvious. And Crow's barn was the last place anyone had seen physical evidence of JT's existence before he vanished completely. The rain started again around 10:30. Cold and vicious, turning the highway into a black mirror that reflected nothing but danger. Lily's hands were numb on the grips, her vision blurred from water and wind, but she kept pace with Stone, matching his speed, trusting the Harley to carry her through conditions that should have killed her. Behind them, 96 engines roared in unison, a sound like thunder that refused to fade. They reached the turnoff just before 11. Stone slowed and guided them down a dirt road that had become mud, the bikes fishtailing and sliding but never stopping. The barn appeared through the rain after half a mile, a massive structure listing to one side, its roof partially collapsed, surrounded by overgrown fields that had gone wild years ago. Stone killed his engine 50 yards out. The others followed in sequence until only rain and breathing remained. He dismounted and pulled a flashlight from his saddlebag. Cage, Reaper, Diesel, come with me. Everyone else forms a perimeter. Anyone approaches who isn't us, you stop them. Permanently. The bikers dispersed without question. Within 2 minutes, they'd established a defensive circle around the property. Men with weapons, radios, and the kind of experience that turns ordinary people into predators when circumstances require it. Stone led Lily, Cage, Reaper, and Diesel toward the barn. The door was chained, but the lock was rusted through. Diesel kicked it once, and the metal shattered. The door swung open with a scream of corroded hinges. Inside, the barn was larger than it looked from outside. The roof had holes big enough to let in rain and moonlight. Agricultural equipment sat in various states of decay, tractors, plows, tools that hadn't been touched in decades. Everything was covered in dust and bird shit and the specific smell of abandonment. Stone swept his flashlight across the space. We tore this place apart in 2009, checked every corner, every board, every piece of equipment, found the Harley under a tarp in the back. Nothing else. Where exactly was the bike? Lily's voice echoed. Stone pointed to the rear corner. There, behind those hay bales. They moved toward the location. The hay bales were rotted now, barely holding shape. Lily pushed them aside and revealed the spot where her father's motorcycle had sat hidden for 3 years after he'd died. The ground was dirt and straw. Nothing special. Nothing that screamed hidden evidence. Cage kicked at the ground. There's nothing here. We're wasting time. Maybe. Lily knelt and started digging with her hands. The dirt was soft from rain leaking through the roof. She dug down 6 inches, then a foot. Her fingers hit something solid. Stop. Stone knelt beside her. They cleared the dirt together, revealing a metal box buried directly beneath where the Harley's front wheel would have rested. The box was maybe 2 feet long, waterproof, sealed with a combination lock. Reaper pulled it free and set it on a workbench. How do we open it? Stone tried the lock. It didn't budge. We could shoot it off. And risk destroying whatever's inside? Diesel shook his head. We need the combination. Lily stared at the box. Try Maria's birthday. We don't know her birthday. March 15th. It was on the hospital intake form from the El Paso storage unit. Lily's voice was steady. Try 0315. Stone dialed the combination. The lock clicked open. Inside the box were 3 items: a hard drive, a handwritten ledger, and a USB stick wrapped in plastic. Stone pulled out the ledger and opened it. Page after page of dates, amounts, locations, financial records documenting every transaction Thomas Kane had run through the Brotherhood between 2003 and 2006. This is it. Stone's voice was barely above a whisper. This is everything, every shipment, every payment, every dirty deal we ran for Kane. Names, dates, amounts. Enough to put away half the Texas criminal underground if it went to the feds. Cage grabbed the ledger and flipped through pages. His face went pale. JT documented everything, every brother who participated, every contact on Kane's side. If this gets out, we're all going to prison. That was the point. Reaper picked up the hard drive. JT was going to use this as leverage, threatened to release it if Kane didn't let them go. But he died before he could make the trade. Lily took the USB stick and examined it. What's on this? Stone plugged it into a laptop Diesel had brought. Files appeared on screen, audio recordings, video surveillance, photographs. Evidence JT had compiled showing Kane wasn't just running a criminal operation, he was working with federal agents, playing both sides, using the Brotherhood to take down his competition while feeding intel to the government to protect himself. He was an informant. Stone's voice carried decades of betrayal. Kane was working with the feds the entire time. Every bust that happened between 2003 and 2006, the Juarez cartel takedown, the border weapons seizures, the Scorpions getting dismantled, all of it came from intel Kane fed them using us as his eyes and ears. Cage slammed his fist against the workbench. That son of a bitch! We trusted him. We risked our lives running his shipments, and he was selling us out the entire time. Not all of us. Diesel pointed to a document on the screen. Look at the names. JT's not on the list of people Kane protected. Neither is Stone. Neither are half the senior members. Kane was selective. He protected the brothers he could control and fed the others to the feds when it suited him. Lily scrolled through the files. There's more. Financial records showing payments from federal agencies to offshore accounts in Kane's name. Dates that line up with major busts. He wasn't just an informant, he was getting paid for every takedown. How much? Millions, spread across 12 years. Lily looked at Stone. This is why my parents ran. JT figured out Kane was dirty, knew if he ran that final shipment, he'd end up dead or in prison while Kane walked away clean. Stone closed the laptop. This changes everything. If we go to the feds with this, Kane's entire legacy collapses. Every case he touched gets reopened. Every conviction based on his intel gets challenged. And every brother he protected goes down with him. Cage's voice was cold. Including us. Because we still ran those shipments even if we didn't know Kane was dirty. So what do we do? Reaper looked around the barn. We can't use this without destroying ourselves. But we can't ignore it either. Not with Kane's people coming for Lily. Lily stood. We use it as leverage. Same plan JT had. Offer to keep it buried in exchange for guaranteed safety. From who? Cage gestured at the evidence. Kane's dead. His organization's scattered. There's nobody left to negotiate with. Someone sent me that photograph. Someone knows I'm connected to JT. Someone gave me 24 hours to comply or die. Lily's voice was hard. That person is still out there. Still running whatever's left of Kane's operation. We find them and we make the trade. Stone shook his head. We don't even know who they are. Then we make them come to us. Lily looked at the gathered bikers. We let them know we found the evidence. We broadcast it. Force their hand. That's suicide. No, that's bait. Lily pulled out her phone. Someone's been watching me, tracking me. They know where I live, where I ride, who I talk to. That means they're close. Local, maybe even inside the Brotherhood. The temperature in the barn dropped. Every biker looked at each other with sudden suspicion. The idea that there was a traitor among them, someone feeding information to Kane's people, turned brothers into potential enemies in seconds. Cage spoke slowly. You're saying one of us is dirty. I'm saying someone knew exactly when to leave that photograph. Someone knew I'd be alone at the trailer. Someone's been feeding intel about Brotherhood movements to Kane's people since before I showed up. Lily looked directly at Cage. And the only people who could do that are people inside this room or people at the warehouse vote. Careful. Cage's voice went dangerous. You're accusing brothers of betrayal. I'm stating facts. Someone's compromised. We figure out who before we make any moves with this evidence, or we're all dead. Stone stepped between them. She's right. We've had leaks, information getting out that shouldn't. I blamed it on bad security or loose talk. But if someone's actively working against us, he looked around the barn. We need to know who. Diesel pulled his weapon. Then we do this the hard way. Nobody leaves this barn until we figure out who's dirty. The other bikers mirrored the movement. Suddenly 5 men were armed and facing each other in a decaying barn while rain poured through holes in the roof and washed away any illusion of unity. Reaper kept his hands visible. This is insane. We're brothers. We don't turn on each other based on paranoid speculation. Then explain the photograph. Stone's weapon stayed holstered, but his hand rested on it. Explain how someone knew Lily would be alone. Explain the timing. Maybe they followed us from the warehouse. We had lookouts. Nobody followed us. Stone's eyes were hard. The only way they knew is if someone told them. Someone in this room or someone at the vote. Cage lowered his weapon slightly. You're talking about 97 suspects. Could be anyone. Not anyone. Lily's voice cut through the tension. Think about it. Who benefits from me being dead? Who's been fighting my presence since day one? Who voted against protection and pushed for cutting me loose? Every eye turned to Cage. His face went dark. You think I'm the traitor? I think you've done everything possible to undermine me since I showed up. I think you questioned Stone's judgment. I think you pushed for using me as bait. And I think if anyone in this Brotherhood would sell out to Kane's people, it would be someone who already has blood on their hands from the old days. Cage raised his weapon and pointed it directly at Lily's head. Say that again. Stone drew faster. His pistol was aimed at Cage before anyone could blink. Lower it. Not until she apologizes. She's not apologizing. She's asking questions we should have asked weeks ago. Stone's voice was ice. Now lower your weapon before I make you. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. The barn was silent except for rain and breathing and the sound of safeties clicking off on multiple weapons. They were seconds from a bloodbath. Brothers killing brothers over accusations and doubt, and 20 years of buried guilt. Then headlights appeared outside. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Engines that weren't motorcycles. The perimeter guard started shouting warnings. Stone lowered his weapon. We got company. They moved to the barn door and looked out. 6 SUVs were rolling up the dirt road toward the property, headlights cutting through rain, moving with military precision. The perimeter guards had their weapons up, but were massively outgunned. How many? Diesel's voice was calm. 30. Maybe more. Stone pulled out his phone and dialed. Gunner, fall back to the barn. Everyone falls back. We make our stand here. The bikers retreated in formation, weapons ready, backing toward the barn, while the SUVs formed a semicircle 50 yards out. The vehicles killed their engines simultaneously. Doors opened. Men emerged wearing tactical gear and carrying assault rifles. Professional, disciplined, the kind of mercenaries who get paid by warlords and cartels to solve problems permanently. A single figure walked forward from the center vehicle. Older, maybe 70, wearing an expensive coat and moving like someone used to people dying at his command. Stone's breath caught. That's impossible. What? That's Thomas Kane. Stone's voice was barely audible. He's supposed to be dead. The old man stopped 30 feet from the barn. His voice carried clearly despite the rain. Jackson Maddox, been a long time. Stone stepped into the doorway. You died 8 years ago. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Kane smiled, cold, corporate, the kind of expression that never reaches the eyes. Heart attack was convenient. Let me fade from view while the feds close their files. Let me rebuild without scrutiny. Rebuild what? Everything your brother tried to destroy. Kane's gaze shifted to Lily. Hello, Miss Rodriguez. You look exactly like your mother. She was beautiful, too. Shame about what happened to her. Lily felt ice in her veins. You killed them. I didn't kill anyone. The storm killed your mother. Your father's paranoia killed him. I simply created the circumstances that forced their choices. Kane gestured to the barn. Now, I believe you found something that belongs to me. I'd like it back. Stone raised his weapon. You're not getting shit. I have 30 armed professionals surrounding this barn. You have maybe 100 bikers with hunting rifles and handguns. The math isn't in your favor. Kane's voice never changed. Calm, reasonable, absolutely lethal. I'm offering you a trade. Give me the evidence JT compiled. All of it. Hard drive, ledger, recordings. In exchange, I let you and Miss Rodriguez live. Everyone walks away. The past stays buried. And if we refuse, then my people level this barn with you inside. 30 minutes from now, this property is a smoking crater, and the Brotherhood is a memory. Kane checked his watch. You have 5 minutes to decide. He turned and walked back to his vehicle, leaving Stone and the others standing in the barn doorway, surrounded by guns and rain and impossible choices. Cage lowered his weapon. We're fucked. Not yet. Stone looked at Lily. You said we use this as leverage. Now's your chance. What's the play? Lily's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded. But they had something Kane wanted desperately enough to risk exposing himself after 8 years hiding. That meant the evidence was more dangerous than 30 mercenaries. We don't give him everything. Her voice was steady. We give him the ledger and the USB stick. But we keep the hard drive. Tell him it's insurance. If anything happens to us or the Brotherhood, the hard drive goes to every major news outlet and federal agency simultaneously. He'll never accept that. He will, because the alternative is we upload everything right now and destroy him completely. At least this way he gets partial control. Lily looked at Stone. It's not perfect, but it keeps us alive long enough to figure out a better play. Stone thought for 10 seconds. Then he nodded. Reaper, copy everything from the hard drive to a backup. Hide it somewhere Kane's people will never find. Diesel, prep the ledger and USB for handoff. Cage... He looked at the biker who'd had a gun to Lily's head 2 minutes ago. You're coming with me. We deliver this together. Why me? Because if there is a traitor, I want them in my sight. Stone's voice carried no room for argument. Let's move. They had 90 seconds before Kane's deadline expired. Reaper worked frantically copying files while Diesel wrapped the physical evidence in plastic. Lily stood at the door watching mercenaries check their weapons and prepare for an assault that would end with everyone dead. Ready? Reaper handed Stone a second hard drive. Originals copied. This one's encrypted. Even if Kane gets his hands on it, he can't access it without the password. What's the password? Her birthday. Reaper nodded toward Lily. March 15th, 2006. Same combination that opened the box. Stone pocketed the drive and picked up the ledger and USB stick. Stay here. If shooting starts, you run. Take the backup drive and get it somewhere safe. Somewhere the feds will find it if we don't make it. Lily grabbed his arm. Don't do this alone. I'm not. Cage is coming. Stone pulled free gently. This is what leadership looks like. Making the hard calls so others don't have to. He and Cage walked into the rain toward Kane's position. The mercenaries tracked them with rifle sights, but didn't fire. When they reached Kane's vehicle, the old man stepped out and examined the evidence under a portable light. The ledger, good. The USB stick, also good. Kane looked up. Where's the hard drive? Insurance. Stone's voice carried across the distance. You get the most damaging evidence. We keep the recordings. If anything happens to Lily or the Brotherhood, those recordings get released, automatically. No negotiation, no second chances. Kane smiled. You think I'm afraid of recordings? I think you spent 8 years hiding because those recordings prove you were a federal informant. I think if that goes public, Every criminal organization you ever betrayed will come for you. Every case you touched gets reopened. Every agency you worked with gets investigated. Stone stepped closer. The ledger and USB stick are dangerous to us. The recordings are lethal to you. That's the trade. Take it or burn with us. Kane studied Stone for a long moment. Then he nodded to one of his men, who brought forward a briefcase. Inside is $5 million, cash. Consider it payment for 20 years of silence and cooperation. He handed the case to Stone. The recordings stay buried. Miss Rodriguez lives her life without interference. The Brotherhood continues operating. Everyone benefits. And if we break the deal, then I stop being reasonable. Kane's voice dropped to something colder. I've rebuilt my operation over 8 years. I have contacts in law enforcement, military, government. I can make 97 bikers disappear before anyone notices they're gone. The only reason you're still breathing is because killing you creates complications. Don't make me reconsider that calculation. Stone took the briefcase. We're done here. Not quite. Kane gestured, and 2 mercenaries grabbed Cage, pulling him away from Stone before anyone could react. I said everyone walks away. I didn't say everyone walks away together. What the fuck? Cage struggled, but the mercenaries held him effortlessly. Kane pulled a pistol and pressed it against Cage's temple. You've been very helpful these past few weeks, feeding me information about Lily's movements, about Brotherhood votes, about when she'd be vulnerable. He looked at Stone. Did you really think I'd leave my inside man with you after collecting the evidence? The world stopped. Stone stared at Cage. You're the traitor. Cage's face twisted. I did what I had to do. Kane approached me 6 months ago. Said if I helped him locate JT's evidence, he'd wipe my record clean, expunge my involvement in the old shipments, give me a clean start. So you sold out Lily. I sold out a stranger to protect my family, Cage's voice cracked. I got kids, Stone. A wife, a business. I can't go to prison for shit we did 20 years ago. Kane offered me a way out. I took it. Stone's hand moved toward his weapon. 30 rifles immediately tracked him. He stopped. Kane pressed the gun harder against Cage's skull. Here's the thing about traitors. They're useful until they're not. You've served your purpose, Cage. Now you're a liability. Wait, we had a deal. Deals change. Kane pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed across the field. Cage's body dropped into the mud. Blood mixed with rain and disappeared into darkness. Stone stood frozen, staring at his dead brother while mercenaries kept their weapons trained on him. Kane lowered his pistol and smiled. Just business, Jackson. Nothing personal. He climbed back into his vehicle. Remember our agreement. The recordings stay buried. Miss Rodriguez stays quiet, and we never speak of this again. The SUVs started pulling away. Within 2 minutes, they disappeared down the dirt road, leaving Stone standing over Cage's corpse holding $5 million and the weight of impossible choices. Lily ran out of the barn. The other bikers followed. They surrounded Cage's body in the rain, 96 men staring at a brother who'd betrayed them and paid for it with a bullet. Diesel spoke quietly. What do we do? Stone looked at the briefcase in his hand, at Cage's blood washing away, at Lily standing there soaked and exhausted and alive because a traitor had died in her place. We bury him. With honor. Because he was still our brother even when he forgot what that meant. Stone's voice was hollow. Then we take this money, and we build something better. Something JT and Maria would have wanted for their daughter. Reaper pulled out his phone. I already uploaded the backup drive, sent copies to 3 separate law firms with instructions to release everything if we don't check in weekly. Kane thinks he's safe. He's wrong. Good. Stone looked at Lily. Your father spent 15 years running from this man. You spent 20 years not knowing you were in danger. Now you know. Now you're armed. Now you choose what happens next. Lily stared at Cage's body, at the barn where her father had hidden evidence meant to protect her, at 96 bikers standing in the rain ready to follow wherever she led. She thought about $40 in a scrapyard, about dragging a motorcycle through 2 miles of hell, about videos of parents she'd never meet telling her they loved her enough to disappear. We don't run. Her voice cut through the rain. We hunt. Kane thinks this is over. It's not. He killed my parents, threatened my family, murdered a brother right in front of us. She looked at Stone. We use that hard drive. We destroy him. We make sure everyone knows what he did and who he really is. That means war. Then we go to war. Lily's voice didn't waver. My father ran. I'm not my father. I don't run from monsters. I make them regret thinking I was prey. Stone studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. JT would be proud. He raised his voice to carry across the field. Mount up. We ride back to Abilene. Tomorrow we plan. Tomorrow we hit back. Tonight we remember Cage as a brother who made the wrong choice but paid the price. He died protecting the Brotherhood in the only way he knew how, by taking a bullet meant for all of us. The bikers moved to their Harleys. Engines fired up one by one. Stone handed Lily the briefcase. This is yours, your inheritance. Your father's evidence bought it with 20 years of hiding. Use it to build the life he wanted for you. Lily looked at the case. $5 million, more money than she'd ever imagined. Enough to disappear, enough to buy safety, enough to walk away from all of this and never look back. She handed it back to Stone. Split it. Every brother gets an equal share. We're family. Family doesn't get rich while others starve. Stone took the case slowly. You're sure? I'm sure. Lily walked to her Harley. I didn't survive 20 years alone by choosing money over people. I'm not starting now. She mounted the bike and started the engine. The Harley roared to life beneath her, her father's machine, rebuilt and ready, carrying her toward a future built from violence and loyalty and the specific kind of love that only exists in people willing to die for each other. Stone climbed onto his Harley beside her. What's the first move? Lily looked at the barn where everything had changed, where evidence had been found, where a traitor had been exposed, where the past had finally caught up to people who thought they could bury it forever. We find everyone who worked with Kane, every contact, every dirty cop, every federal agent who looked the other way, and we make them answer for what they did to my parents. Her voice was ice and fire. Then we bring Kane's entire empire down, not with violence, with truth. We release everything and let the world decide what justice looks like. Stone nodded slowly. That's a long game. Dangerous game. I've been playing the long game my whole life. Surviving foster care, surviving homelessness, surviving the system that forgot I existed. Lily looked at him. Difference is now I'm not playing alone. Now I got 96 brothers willing to stand with me. That changes everything. 96. Cage is gone. No. Lily looked back at the body being loaded onto a truck for transport. 97. We don't forget our dead, even the ones who betrayed us, because remembering them reminds us who we don't want to become. She throttled the Harley and pulled away from the barn. Stone followed. Behind them, 95 engines joined the formation, a wall of chrome and leather and raw aggression rolling through the Texas night while rain hammered down and lightning split the sky. They rode back to Abilene like an army returning from battle, except the battle hadn't ended. It had just begun. Because Thomas Kane thought buying their silence with $5 million and a dead traitor meant he'd won. He was wrong. The girl who dragged a rusted motorcycle 2 miles through brutal heat wasn't someone who stayed bought. She was someone who survived by becoming more dangerous than whatever wanted her dead. And now she had evidence that could destroy a criminal empire, a brotherhood willing to die for her, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Kane had made one fatal mistake. He'd let her live. And live meant she could fight back. The Harleys thundered into Abilene just before dawn. 97 bikes parking outside the warehouse like a declaration of war. Lily dismounted and looked at the building where brothers voted on her existence, where Cage had argued against her, where the Brotherhood had chosen protection over safety. Stone approached. We need rest. Tomorrow we strategize. No rest. Lily's voice was hard. We move now, before Kane realizes we're not backing down, before he has time to prepare. She looked at the gathered bikers. How many of you are ready to burn down everything Thomas Kane built? 96 hands went up without hesitation. Then let's get to work. Lily walked into the warehouse. Behind her, the Brotherhood followed, scarred, dangerous men who'd just chosen truth over survival because a 20-year-old girl who'd lost everything showed them what loyalty actually meant. And somewhere in the pre-dawn darkness, Thomas Kane sat in a luxury office believing he'd won, believing the past would stay buried, believing $5 million bought permanent silence. He'd find out different by sunset, because the ghost of JT Maddox had just come home. And this time, she wasn't running. She was hunting. The warehouse filled with cigarette smoke and strategy by the time the sun rose. Maps covered the table. Photographs of Kane's known associates lined the walls. Laptop screens glowed with financial records, surveillance footage, and 20 years of evidence that JT Maddox had died compiling. Lily stood at the center of it all, exhausted but wired, running on adrenaline and the specific kind of rage that comes from finally understanding how deep the betrayal went. Stone spread a file across the table. Kane owns 3 properties under shell companies, one in El Paso near the border, one in Dallas disguised as a consulting firm, and one here, a warehouse on the industrial edge of Abilene where he's been operating for the past 6 months. He's been here the whole time? Diesel's voice was flat with disbelief. Right under our noses? Makes sense. Keep your enemies close. Monitor the Brotherhood. Make sure we never found the evidence. Stone looked at Lily. He probably knew about you before we did. Been tracking you since you aged out of the system. Lily stared at the warehouse address. 3 miles from where she'd been sleeping in a trailer with no electricity while Thomas Kane watched from comfort and safety. What's he using the warehouse for? Logistics. Moving product across the border. Same operation he ran 20 years ago, just with better cover. Reaper pulled up shipping manifests on his laptop. Trucks come and go every 48 hours, all legitimate on paper, but the manifests don't match the cargo weights. He's smuggling something. Weapons? Or people? Or drugs? Could be anything. Reaper zoomed in on a photograph showing security cameras, armed guards, and reinforced gates. He's got maybe 20 men on site at any given time. All professionals, all armed. We hit this place, it's going to be a bloodbath. Then we don't hit it. Lily's voice cut through the planning. We expose it. Send the evidence to the feds. Let them do the raiding. Stone shook his head. Kane's got people inside federal agencies. That's how he survived this long. We send evidence to the wrong person. It gets buried, and Kane knows we're moving against him. Then we don't send it to one person. We send it to everyone. Lily pulled out her phone. Media outlets, independent journalists, watchdog organizations. We flood the system with so much evidence that Kane can't bury it all. Even if half his contacts try to suppress it, the other half will run with it. Diesel leaned forward. That's smart. But it also means we lose our leverage. Once the evidence is public, we can't threaten to release it anymore. We don't need leverage. We need justice. Lily looked around the room at 96 exhausted bikers who just buried a brother and spent the night planning war. My father spent 15 years running from Kane. My mother died running. I'm done running. We end this today. Stone studied her for a long moment. If we do this, there's no going back. Kane will come after us with everything. So will anyone else we expose in those files. Dirty cops, corrupt agents, criminal associates. We'll be targets for the rest of our lives. We're already targets. Lily's voice was steady. Difference is now we're armed and angry and we've got nothing left to lose. A slow smile crossed Stone's face. JT used to say the same thing, right before he did something reckless that somehow worked out. He looked at the gathered brothers. All in favor of burning Kane's empire to the ground and accepting the consequences? 96 hands went up. Then let's make some noise. Mate. They split into teams. One group would compile the evidence into packages for distribution. Another would reach out to journalists and media contacts. A third would monitor Kane's warehouse for movement and prepare for retaliation. Lily worked with Reaper, organizing files by severity and impact. Financial crimes here, human trafficking there, federal corruption in a separate folder. By noon they were ready. Reaper had contact information for 47 journalists, 12 news organizations, and 7 federal agencies that operated independently from the ones Kane had compromised. They uploaded everything simultaneously: emails, file transfers, physical packages sent by courier. The evidence hit the internet like a bomb. Within 2 hours, the first stories broke. A Dallas news station ran footage from JT's recordings showing Kane meeting with known cartel members. An independent journalist published the financial records proving federal payments to offshore accounts. A watchdog organization released documents showing 20 years of corruption and conspiracy. The story went viral before sunset. Lily watched it unfold from the warehouse, monitoring news feeds on multiple screens. Every outlet was running the story. Social media exploded with outrage. Federal agencies released statements promising investigations. Kane's carefully constructed facade crumbled in real time as the world learned what he'd been hiding for 2 decades. Stone stood beside her. "It's done. No taking it back now." "Good." Lily's voice carried no regret. "How long before Kane retaliates?" "He's already moving." Diesel appeared from the communications room. Police scanners lit up. Reports of a convoy heading toward Abilene from Dallas. 6 vehicles, armed occupants, ETA 30 minutes. "He's coming here. Where else would he go? We destroyed everything. His reputation, his operation, his protection. All he's got left is violence." Stone pulled his weapon and checked the magazine. "Everyone arms up. We defend this position. If Kane wants a war, we give him one he won't survive." The bikers moved with practiced efficiency. Weapons distributed, defensive positions established, windows reinforced, exits secured. Within 15 minutes, the warehouse had transformed into a fortress manned by men who'd spent decades learning how to survive impossible situations. Lily stood near the main entrance holding the pistol Stone had taught her to use at the quarry. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled. She wasn't scared, just ready. Reaper approached. "You should be in the back, safest position. I'm not hiding while others fight for me." "Lily, my father ran. My mother died. Cage betrayed us. I'm done watching other people pay the price for my existence." She looked at him. "I stay at the front. If Kane wants me, he comes through everyone first." Reaper nodded slowly. "Your father would be proud. Scared, but proud." The convoy arrived exactly on schedule. 6 SUVs pulled up outside the warehouse, engines idling, doors remaining closed. Nobody emerged. They just sat there while tension built like pressure before an explosion. Then Thomas Kane's voice came over a loudspeaker. "Jackson Maddox, I believe we had an agreement. You've broken it spectacularly." Stone stepped into the doorway. "Agreements change." "Indeed they do." Kane finally emerged from the center vehicle, flanked by armed mercenaries. He looked older in the harsh afternoon light, diminished somehow despite the weapons backing him. "You've cost me everything, Jackson. 20 years of careful planning, destroyed in an afternoon by a girl who should have stayed invisible." "She's not invisible anymore." Stone's voice carried across the parking lot. "And neither are you. The world knows what you are now, what you've done, who you've killed. There's nowhere left to hide." "Oh, I'm not hiding." Kane raised his hand. The mercenaries lifted their weapons. "I'm ending this the way I should have ended it 20 years ago, with overwhelming force and no survivors." "You'll die trying." "Perhaps. But you'll die first." Kane gestured and the mercenaries advanced. Stone fired first. The shot took down the lead mercenary before he'd moved 3 steps. Then the warehouse erupted. Gunfire from every window, every doorway, every defensive position the Brotherhood had established. The mercenaries returned fire, but they were exposed in the parking lot while the bikers had cover and superior position. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When the smoke cleared, 12 mercenaries were down. The rest had retreated to the SUVs. Kane stood behind an open door, untouched, staring at the warehouse with an expression that mixed shock and fury. "This isn't over." His voice cracked with rage. "I'll burn this place down with all of you inside." "Try it." Lily stepped into the doorway beside Stone. She raised her weapon and fired once. The shot went high, missing Kane by inches but shattering the SUV window behind him. "My father ran from you. I won't. Come get me if you want me, but you'll have to go through every single person in this building first." Kane stared at her. "You're JT's daughter. I see it now. Same reckless stupidity. Same willingness to die for nothing." "He didn't die for nothing. He died protecting me. That's not nothing. That's everything." Lily's voice carried across the distance. "You killed him because he wouldn't be your weapon anymore. Because he chose love over fear. That's not weakness. That's strength you'll never understand." Sirens began wailing in the distance. Multiple sirens, police, federal, emergency response. The news coverage had done its job. Authorities were coming. And with the evidence now public, Kane couldn't buy his way out or threaten his way clear. Kane heard the sirens, and his face went pale. He looked at the warehouse, at the bodies in the parking lot, at the empire he'd spent 20 years building collapsing around him in real time. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Stone's voice was final. You're done, Kane. It's over. The old man climbed back into his SUV. The convoy pulled away fast, disappearing toward the highway while police units closed in from 3 directions. Stone lowered his weapon and exhaled slowly. Did we just win? Lily watched the SUVs disappear. We survived. That's close enough. The police arrived 5 minutes later. They found a warehouse full of armed bikers, spent shell casings, and bodies in the parking lot. The Brotherhood surrendered their weapons without resistance. Stone explained everything: the evidence, the attack, Kane's operation. With the media coverage already confirming the story, the police had no choice but to listen. It took 6 hours to sort through statements and evidence. By midnight, the Brotherhood was cleared, acting in self-defense against a known criminal who'd attacked first. Kane's mercenaries who survived were arrested. The dead were tagged and transported. And somewhere out there, Thomas Kane was running again, except this time there was nowhere left to run. Federal agencies launched a manhunt. With his face plastered across every news outlet and his crimes documented in excruciating detail, Kane had maybe 48 hours before someone caught him. And when they did, he'd face charges that carried lifetimes in prison: conspiracy, trafficking, murder, corruption, and 20 years of crimes he'd committed while pretending to help bring criminals to justice. Stone found Lily sitting outside the warehouse in the cold night air, staring at stars she could barely see through Abilene's light pollution. He sat beside her without speaking. Finally, Lily broke the silence. Is it really over? For Kane, yeah. For us, Stone shrugged. We'll be testifying for months. Federal investigators are going to pick apart every claim in those files. Some brothers might face charges for things they did 20 years ago. Will you? Probably. I ran those shipments same as everyone else. Difference is, now I'm willing to face consequences. Stone lit a cigarette. Your father taught me that. Right before he disappeared. He said running from your past just means it catches you later. Better to face it head on, even if it destroys you. Did facing it destroy him? No. Running from it did. Stone exhaled smoke. But you didn't run. You faced everything head on. That saved us all. Lily looked at the warehouse, at the bullet holes in the walls, at the bloodstains in the parking lot that would take weeks to fade. I didn't save anyone. People died because of me. Cage betrayed us because of me. The Brotherhood's facing federal investigations because of me. Cage betrayed us because he was weak, and Kane exploited that weakness. People died because Kane sent them to kill us. The Brotherhood's facing investigations for crimes we actually committed. Stone turned to face her. You didn't cause any of that. You exposed it. There's a difference. Doesn't feel different. Never does. Stone stood and offered his hand. Come on. There's something I want to show you. Butts. They rode to the sundown mobile home park just before dawn. The Harley felt different now. Not just a machine, but a connection to everything that had happened. To $40 in a scrapyard. To parents who'd sacrificed everything. To a Brotherhood that had claimed her as family despite every reason to walk away. Stone led her to her trailer and pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is yours. Deed to Crow's Barn and the 30 acres around it. Property's paid off. Taxes current. It's where your father hid his legacy. Now it's where you build yours. Lily took the envelope slowly. I don't understand. You said you split the $5 million with the Brotherhood. 97 shares. That's about $50,000 per brother. I'm giving you mine back. Stone's voice was quiet. Use it to fix up that property. Turn it into something worth having. Maybe a place for kids aging out of foster care who need somewhere safe to land. Maybe a garage where you teach people to rebuild motorcycles the way we taught you. Whatever you want, just make it count. Stone? Your father spent 15 years running from his mistakes. You spent 20 years surviving other people's mistakes. Time you got to build something that's actually yours. He squeezed her shoulder. Besides, that barn's got ghosts. Only way to put them to rest is to fill the space with something better. Lily looked at the envelope, at the deed to property where everything had changed, where her father's evidence had been buried, where Cage had died, where the past had finally been excavated and exposed. I'll need help. You got 96 brothers who'd die for you. I think they can spare some time for construction. Stone smiled. We'll start next week, once the federal investigators stop crawling up our asses. They stood in silence watching the sun rise over Abilene. The city looked different now, less hostile, less like a place designed to crush people who didn't fit. Maybe it hadn't changed. Maybe Lily had. 6 weeks later, Crow's barn looked like something worth saving. The roof was repaired, the walls reinforced, the interior gutted and rebuilt into something functional, a workshop on one side, living quarters on the other, space in between for motorcycles and the people who rode them. Lily stood in the doorway watching bikers work. They'd shown up every weekend without being asked, hammering, painting, wiring, plumbing, turning a place of death into a place of rebuilding. Diesel was installing lights, Reaper was building cabinets, Gunner was teaching a 17-year-old kid who'd aged out of foster care last month how to rebuild a carburetor. Stone approached from behind. Looks good.
Looks like home, Lily corrected. It was the first time she'd used that word and meant it. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me. Thank your father. He's the one who started this. We're just finishing what he couldn't. He died alone, running, scared. No. Stone looked at the restored Harley sitting in the middle of the workshop, chrome gleaming, engine perfect, ready to ride. He died protecting his daughter and trusting his brothers to find her. That's not alone. That's family. Lily walked to the motorcycle and ran her hand along the tank. The carved letters, JTM, had been polished until they shone. A reminder, a promise, a name that meant something beyond tragedy. I'm writing to Marfa tomorrow. Her voice was quiet. Where they crashed, where my mother died. I want to see it. You want company?
Yeah, Lily looked at him. All of you, the whole brotherhood. I want to do what you've done every year. The memorial ride for JT and Maria. But this time, her voice caught. This time I get to be there. Stone nodded. We ride at dawn. 97 Harleys rolled out of Abilene at sunrise. They rode south through desert highways, engines synchronized, chrome, catching the early light. Lily rode at the front beside Stone, her father's motorcycle carrying her toward the place where everything had ended so she could finally begin. They reached Marfa by noon. The crash site was marked by a small memorial, flowers left by the Brotherhood over 20 years, now joined by fresh ones Lily had brought. She dismounted and stood at the edge of the road where her parents' lives had ended in storm and steel. Stone stood beside her. They were heading to Mexico, planning to cross the border and disappear completely. The storm caught them 10 miles from safety. Did they suffer? Your mother died in the hospital 2 days later, never regained consciousness after the crash. Your father... Stone's voice roughened. He stayed with her until the end. Then he made sure you were safe before he ran. He survived another 3 years before Kane's people caught up. Lily knelt and placed the flowers at the memorial. I wish I'd known them. They knew you. That's what mattered to them. Stone gestured to the Brotherhood standing in formation behind them. And now you got 96 people who knew them, willing to make sure their sacrifice meant something. Lily stood. She looked at the gathered bikers, scarred, dangerous men who'd chosen to protect a homeless girl because she carried the blood of a brother they'd lost. Men who'd risked everything, fought federal investigations, faced down mercenaries, and rebuilt a barn just to give her a place to belong. Thank you, her voice barely carried. All of you, for finding me, for protecting me, for teaching me what family actually means. The bikers didn't respond with words. They just stood there in the Texas heat, engines idling, a wall of chrome and leather, an absolute commitment to the idea that some debts get paid forward across generations. Stone handed Lily a bottle of whiskey. Your father's tradition. We pour one out for the dead. Then we ride until sunset, celebrating the fact that we're still alive. Lily opened the bottle and poured whiskey onto the ground where her parents had died. The liquid disappeared into dust and memory. Then she raised the bottle and took a drink. The burn felt like truth, painful but necessary. She passed the bottle to Stone. He drank and passed it to Diesel. It moved through the Brotherhood, each man taking a pull, each one silently acknowledging the sacrifice that had brought them here. When the bottle came back empty, Stone threw it against a rock. Glass shattered and glittered in the sunlight like broken promises finally laid to rest. Mount up, his voice carried. We ride for JT, for Maria, and for Lily, the daughter they loved enough to disappear for, and the woman they'd be proud to know survived. 97 engines roared to life simultaneously. They pulled back onto the highway and rode north through the afternoon. Not racing, not rushing, just moving through the world together the way families do. Brothers and the girl they'd claimed as their own, carrying memory and hope toward a future built from wreckage. 3 months later, the barn had transformed completely. It wasn't just a workshop anymore. It was a sanctuary. 5 kids aging out of foster care lived in the rebuilt quarters. They learned mechanics during the day and rode at night under Stone's supervision. The youngest was 16. The oldest was 19. All of them had been invisible until the Brotherhood found them. Lily taught them what Stone had taught her: how to read compression, how to feel damage through metal, how to bring dead machines back to life. More importantly, she taught them what she'd learned surviving homelessness and betrayal and 20 years of being unwanted. Nobody saves you. She said it to a 17-year-old girl named Casey, who'd been kicked out by her foster family for being gay. You save yourself, but having people who show up when you need them, that makes survival possible. Casey looked at the Harley she was rebuilding, a basket case Diesel had found in a junkyard, now slowly becoming roadworthy through repetition and correction. What if I can't do it? Then you try again tomorrow, and the day after that until you can. Lily handed her a wrench. My father hit a motorcycle in this barn 20 years ago, hoping I'd find it someday. I found it with $40 and no idea what I was doing. Now, look where we are. Casey went back to work. Around the barn, other kids did the same, turning wrenches, asking questions, learning that broken things can be fixed if someone cares enough to try. Stone appeared in the doorway. Got someone here to see you. Lily looked up. A woman in her 40s stood beside Stone, wearing a federal badge and carrying a file folder. Her expression was professional, but not hostile. Miss Rodriguez, I'm Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. I've been investigating Thomas Kane's operation for the past 3 months. Lily's hands tightened on the wrench she was holding. Did you find him? We did. Arrested him trying to cross into Canada 2 weeks ago. He's in federal custody awaiting trial. Chen opened the file. We've corroborated everything in the evidence you released. Kane's facing 137 federal charges. He'll die in prison. Good. We're also investigating the brothers who participated in his operations 20 years ago. That includes Stone and several others in your... Chen paused. In your family. Are you arresting them? That depends. We're offering immunity deals to anyone who cooperates fully with the investigation. Most of the crimes are beyond statute of limitations anyway. What we're really after is the network, Kane's contacts, his buyers, his corrupt officials. Chen looked at Lily. Stone says you have influence here, that the Brotherhood listens to you. We need them to testify. And if they do, full immunity, clean records. They walk away. Lily looked at Stone. He nodded slowly. I already told her we'll cooperate. The others will follow. Chen closed the file. There's one more thing. Your father's recordings led us to 7 other criminal operations. Rescued 43 trafficking victims. Shut down weapons pipelines that were arming cartels across 3 countries. What he started, what you finished, saved lives. She handed Lily a document. This is a federal commendation, normally given to law enforcement, but the director felt you earned it for courage in the face of extraordinary danger and for choosing justice over safety. Lily stared at the paper. Official seal, formal language, recognition from a system that had forgotten she existed for 20 years. What am I supposed to do with this? Whatever you want, frame it, burn it, doesn't matter. Chen smiled slightly. What matters is people know what you did. Know that one person with evidence and courage can bring down empires. She looked around the barn at the kids working on motorcycles, and know that broken systems can be fixed if someone cares enough to try. Chen left. Lily stood holding the commendation, staring at words that felt meaningless compared to the weight of everything that had happened to get here. Stone took the paper gently. I'll frame it. Put it on the wall. Remind everyone who comes through here what's possible when you stop running and start fighting back. My father ran. Your father survived long enough for you to finish what he started. That's not failure. That's hope. Stone looked at the kids working around them. This barn, these kids, that motorcycle you rebuilt, It's all because he hid evidence in the ground 20 years ago and trusted someone would eventually find it. He didn't live to see it, but he made it possible.
Lily walked to the Harley sitting in the center of the workshop. Her inheritance, her connection to parents she'd never know, the machine that had cost her $40 and changed everything. "I'm taking a ride." She threw her leg over the bike and started the engine. The familiar roar filled the barn. "Anyone want to come?" Every kid stopped working. Within minutes, 6 motorcycles were running, the ones that were rideable, the ones they'd rebuilt together over 3 months of effort and correction. They followed Lily out of the barn into the afternoon light, engines echoing across 30 acres of land that had been bought with sacrifice and maintained through loyalty. They rode through the property in formation, Lily at the front, Stone beside her, the kids learning what it meant to move through the world with people who showed up when it mattered. They weren't a brotherhood yet, just a family held together by chrome and leather and the understanding that survival requires more than just staying alive. When they circled back to the barn an hour later, Casey pulled up beside Lily. "Where do we go next?" Lily looked at the barn, at the kids who'd been invisible until someone gave them tools and a place to matter. At Stone standing in the doorway watching them with an expression that mixed pride and grief for the brother who should have been here to see this. "Anywhere we want." Her voice carried certainty she'd earned through dragging motorcycles, surviving homelessness, and refusing to stay disappeared. "My father spent 15 years running. I spent 20 years invisible. Neither of those things are true anymore. Now we ride. We build. We find other people who need finding. And we make sure nobody ever has to survive alone the way I did." Casey nodded. The other kids revved their engines in agreement. And somewhere in the space between sunset and full dark, between the ghosts that haunted the barn and the future being built inside it, Lily Rodriguez Maddox understood what her parents had known when they'd chosen to disappear. Love isn't about staying. It's about making sure the people you leave behind have what they need to survive without you. Her parents had given her life and hidden evidence and trusted the brotherhood to find her. Now she was giving that gift forward, one homeless kid at a time, one rebuilt motorcycle at a time, one second chance at a time. The Harleys sat cooling in the twilight. Inside the barn, tools waited for tomorrow's work. And across 30 acres of Texas land bought with sacrifice, the sound of engines slowly faded into night, carrying memory and hope toward a future where broken things got fixed and invisible people finally got seen. Stone walked over as Lily dismounted. "Your father would be proud." "You keep saying that." "I'll keep saying it until you believe it." Stone looked at the barn glowing with light from inside. He spent his whole life trying to outrun consequences. You spent yours facing them head on. That's the difference between running and surviving, between existing and living. Lily pulled off her helmet. "I still don't feel like I'm living, just surviving with better scenery. Give it time. Living sneaks up on you when you're busy surviving." Stone started toward the barn. "Come on, kids made dinner, some kind of pasta thing. Probably terrible, but it's the thought that counts." Lily followed him inside. The kids had set up a table using sawhorses and plywood. Pasta was indeed terrible, overcooked, undersalted, barely edible. But everyone ate anyway because meals taste better when shared with people who understand what it means to have nothing and rebuild from wreckage. After dinner, Lily stood outside watching stars appear one by one through Texas sky. The night was cold. Her breath fogged, but she didn't feel alone. Not anymore. Footsteps behind her. Casey appeared, hands shoved in jacket pockets, looking uncertain. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Does it get easier? The feeling like you don't belong anywhere?" Lily thought about 20 years of foster care, 6 months homeless, 2 weeks with the brotherhood before she understood they meant it when they called her family. "No. But you get better at carrying it, and eventually you find people who carry it with you. That makes the weight manageable." "You really think I belong here?" "I think you showed up. That's all belonging requires." Lily looked at the barn. "My father built this place expecting to disappear. Instead, he created something that outlasted him. Now we're doing the same thing, building something that'll outlast us, something that catches people when they fall." Casey nodded and went back inside. Lily stayed outside a while longer, listening to voices and laughter from the barn, feeling the specific warmth that comes from knowing you're part of something larger than survival. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number.
Kane plead guilty to all charges. Life without parole. It's over. Agent Chen. Lily stared at the message. Over. The word felt strange, incomplete, because endings were never clean. Kane would die in prison, but his victims would carry scars forever. The Brotherhood would testify and face their past. Kids would age out of the barn and struggle with trauma that didn't disappear just because someone gave them tools and shelter. Nothing was over. Everything just kept going, messier, harder, more complicated than stories usually admitted. But that was fine, because Lily had never believed in clean endings anyway. She believed in people showing up, in motorcycles getting rebuilt, in $40 turning into 30 acres and a family built from loyalty instead of blood. She walked back into the barn. Stone was teaching a kid how to set valve clearances. Diesel was welding a frame. Casey was reading a repair manual. Normal things. Necessary things. The kind of work that fills time and builds futures, one small action at a time. Lily picked up a wrench and joined them. Tomorrow there would be more work, more kids, more motorcycles needing resurrection. But tonight, in a barn her father had used to hide from his past, Lily Rodriguez Maddox finally understood what it meant to stop running. It meant showing up, every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Because survival wasn't about escaping danger, it was about facing it armed with people who refused to let you face it alone. And somewhere beyond the barn walls, beyond the Texas night and the highway thunder, beyond memory and loss and everything that had been sacrificed to get here, JT and Maria Maddox's love finally made it home. Not in the daughter they'd never meet, but in the family she'd built from their sacrifice, in the kids she was saving, in the motorcycles getting rebuilt, in the specific kind of hope that only exists in people who survive impossible things and choose to make sure others don't have to survive them alone. The Harley sat waiting for tomorrow's ride, chrome gleaming, engine perfect, ready, just like her.